All right, we're going, Miles. Okay.
Hello, hello, hello. We're live.
We're live, man. This is it. So how am I? Well,
Yeah, how are you?
I'm eating cheese right now.
I
Um,
just ate cheese.
you're
I
lying.
did.
It's so
No, I
full of
did. I There's string cheese wrappers in the trash that I could go. I thought I'm not gonna
evidence.
just during the interview just like "Rah."
Well, there you go.
I should have. I should have.
We could have just eaten cheese together.
If you told me that cheese was a part of this, I would have prepared.
This is
But
the way
no,
I do it. I take it and then I divide it in two and then I just eat it like this.
that's
It's simple.
um, you have a technique.
So I've been doing that since before I was born.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel because I follow a lot of culinary stuff because I
Oh,
love
right.
to cook and love cooking shows, and I feel like because that looks like American cheese,
It is. It
and
is. It's a
American cheese has had a real uh
comeback.
revision in its reception. No, because like I don't know, I think that it was seen as, I mean, and it's people saying like, oh well, it's not real cheese and it's processed, and people were really critical of American cheese. Um,
Hmm.
but I think the point of it, I mean, it's not like, oh, if you don't have Gruyere, slip in American cheese. But it's, I think that the point of it, people are really using it now, and just like when you're cooking and you need something to melt in a certain way. I've just more consistently seen like really respected critics and chefs and food personalities, talking about the virtues of American cheese, and just like, you can't really replicate what it does. Just
Huh.
I mean,
I
if
don't
we had
know.
had the term molecular gastronomy back when American cheese was invented, American cheese would have been molecular gastronomy. It would have been at these like huge restaurants at El Bulli, and they would have been like, "Oh, we have this melting cheese," and people would have lost their minds. Um, so that it's
Miles,
I find American cheese fascinating.
this is the perfect first thing for you to
I
talk about
know.
on
I
this.
know your sneaky strategy of opening with just casually bringing up
Just
American cheese. You
sneak,
baited me, Fedorko.
sneaky strategy. Yeah, no, this is just very informal, and for us,
Yeah,
when we're looking back like 50 years from now, like, oh, like what did we talk about? Like,
yeah,
like,
cheese.
yeah, yeah, exactly, cheese the first,
Yeah,
but
like I always suspected.
let me so for the viewers,
Yes,
for the like my two subscribers, you will be
yeah.
number three.
Oh,
I
I
think.
subscribed last night.
Did you? Were you number
Yeah,
three?
yeah. Because I was like, I should watch this video. The
Yeah,
little
the one
introduction.
that's been on there, and yeah, I've had some trouble uploading the other videos because they're long, and
Yeah,
YouTube won't let me post any that are over 15 minutes, and I've been trying to figure it out for like the
yeah,
last 2 weeks. So so we'll figure it out. But yeah, for the three subscribers now, two others and yourself, who are you? Who are you? How do you
yeah,
know me? And what is your story?
yeah. So my name is Miles Purinton. Coming to you live from New York City. Born and raised in New York City. And I'm primarily an actor. I'm also a writer. I'm a magic toy salesman. Um,
Yeah.
so I hold a bunch of different little hats, but primarily an actor. That's what I would first and foremost consider myself, and it's also how I met Kenny. We both went to Kenyon College, um, and met doing various shows and in the theater scene there. I was
Rocky Horror
heavily
Picture Show was the first
Rocky
one.
Horror Picture Show was
Hmm.
what we started. I ran a theater company called Brave Potato. Although when we did Rocky Horror, it was called Flash Mob. It had been started by Jonathan Myers and Krista Minardi, who were a year and 2 years ahead of me, and really just as a way to. They wanted to do a show, and there wasn't really a way to do that. There wasn't student theater; just wasn't much of a thing. at Kenyon. All of the shows were through the theater department. And there was one student theater group that was called Renegade that was just, you could only do that if it was your first year at Kenyon, but which I think is a great idea. But after Renegade, you really were only doing shows that were department
Yeah,
affiliated.
main stage, right?
Yeah, there were 3 main stage shows, and then drama majors would have their thesis shows, which you needed to get people in. But just, I mean, I think in a lot of it was, I was a child actor. I've been acting since I was 5. And I love acting. At the time, I didn't think I wanted to be an actor. And part of that was because I loved the theater, I wanted to try other things. So my thesis, I wrote and directed a show. And that was a big one, is I wanted to direct, which there wasn't an opportunity to do that. But so Jonathan and Krista had this show, or had this group, which I jumped into and was like, this is my home. And Flash Mob had been a really temporary name, like a flash mob. And so as it grew and became more of a permanent thing, we changed the name, somehow chose Brave Potato.
Yeah, what was that? Wait, so what's the story behind Brave Potato?
So me, Krista, and Pat Canali, the 3 founders, and we met up in New York and talked for like hours over drinks about like what we wanted to do with the student group, and we brainstormed names, and we had a list of like dozens of names. And the main one we wanted was Peasant Productions, because we thought that would fit with us. And we were all set. That was our choice. And then we had to like fill things in. And Pat found that there already was a theater company called Peasant Productions that exists somewhere out there, and was just worried about copyright stuff. And so I literally get a text where he's just like, how about Brave Potato? And I was like, okay, but why? And I never heard back. And then we were Brave Potato. But you know what? It worked. It was so strange that I think it really kind of helped us be memorable. And I think because we were concerned because there wasn't really student theater. We were concerned about not being taken seriously, and which is why we like peasant product, like something that sounded more real. But I think that by embracing the scrappiness and the weirdness of it all, it's why we found success. Because we did really well, which is why we got people like Kenny in. We've kind of found a pretty enthusiastic core group, which I mean, and Kenny, you and I did 2 main stage shows together, Hamlet and Icarus and Aria, but we really got to know each other because of this scrappy little student theater group, which I think is very important.
And yeah, so we got to know each other, but I don't think we really okay, so is that what you're going to say?
Yeah. Well, and it's because this is how we met, and we were, I would say we were friends, and we like, there would be occasional times that we would have long conversations.
Oh my gosh, we had that party at the NCA where we played beer pong, and like we killed it with like Death Cup, right?
The team beer pong champions.
That's right.
Which was great. But yeah, no, we were both in New York. I graduated a year ahead, and then we were both in New York, and we met up and just kept meeting up. And so yeah, I mean, I have to say, a lot of the people from Kenyon who I see most regularly, a lot of them are people that I have gotten to know better since Kenyon, which I think is really an interesting thing. You know, it's if anybody watching doesn't know, Kenyon College is in Gambier, Ohio. It's in the middle of nowhere, and truly the opposite of New York, which I think is why I wanted to go. You know, having been raised here, I was like, I want something completely different. And so, yes, this tiny school in the middle of a cornfield really appealed to me. But yeah, New York, it just has a vibe completely different to anywhere else. And I think that it's a very community-based place in its own way. The people are what make the city. And so you can really, I guess the friendships that I've cultivated in New York are very different from the friendships I've cultivated anywhere else. And I think that that is partly why we were able, this was the right place for us to really forge a bond here.
Yeah, and go to like so many great restaurants and let's see what are the popover place that is gone now.
Called Popovers, rest in
Yeah.
peace,
Someone was
Popovers.
just talking about popovers here like
Uh,
a
it
while.
was so beloved. I mean, it closed a few years ago. So
I
it
think
closed when I was
yeah.
in my 20s, and I'm gonna remember that. Like when I'm in the old age home and not saying anything else, I'll just be like popovers.
Stupid.
And somebody else will be like, I remember popovers. And that's how I'll make friends there.
Stop. Jacob's Pickles.
Jacob's
Oh,
Pickles.
you got me into Ethiopian. That I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah. That's our, I think, our go-to, our default.
yeah, Awash and Queen of Sheba and
Yeah.
Injera, right? Injera's without. I forget that one
Well,
place.
Injera's the bread.
Isn't there a place called Injera though?
There might be a place called Injera. We've
I
gone to a
remember
few
going.
places.
Yeah, many. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. What other good restaurants have we gone to? I'm trying to remember. Um, I don't remember any other ones that like
I
pop.
mean, well, Veselka and
Oh,
the
this okay. Oh
Ukrainian
yeah, yeah,
national
yeah. The Ukrainian
are like,
national.
this is what in 50 years we're gonna.
Yeah, we're gonna be like,
This
well, it's
is the
gonna
most
be.
important to document. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, I think I actually
Hmm.
it's funny because I mean I think an Ethiopian food is something I very much associate with you at this point. But I think it's really interesting because I wouldn't have necessarily have thought, dining would have been one of the things you would mention when it comes to our friendship. But I think that I mean there's something about food that really does forge community.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah. I love food so much. Yeah. Well,
sharing a meal with somebody is a truly special thing. And I mean, cooking a meal for someone is 100%, one of the most personal things that you can do.
oh, you
But
were. Mhm.
but sharing a meal somewhere is really is important, and it can be a defining thing. It can be a hallmark of a relationship. I'm thinking in terms of food. We have a mutual friend, Madeline Jobrack,
Yeah, I just
and this
talked to
is
her the
like
other
one
day.
of my favorite things that's ever happened. Is Madeline was briefly living in New York and mentioned she was like, well, I live above the best donuts in the city, and she was referring to a place called Dough that is really beloved. People love these donuts, and they're good. But I have my favorite place in the city called the Donut Plant.
I think it is the best
That
place. I think you're right.
I
I
think
think
it's so
you're right.
well. And I think part of it for me is like Dough. They do the yeast donuts,
Exactly. That you're
which
right.
I mean are really good. I love cakey donuts. I think that's kind of my preferred. And Donut Plant has both, by the way. But
They have both and more. Yeah, they have
yeah,
donut
yeah,
holes. Yeah, it's very good.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. They have like a little
It's on.
creme brulee donut where they
I
toast the
think it's on
top.
20.
Oh,
It's on. It's on right. I think it's on 27th Street between like 6th and 7th Avenue or
yeah.
something.
Well, I mean, they have a few locations.
Oh,
Yeah. I know one on 23rd.
oh, I think that's the one I'm thinking
Yeah,
of.
yeah. But I really like them. And Madeline was like, yeah, but have you had the donuts from Dough? And I said, yes. And so we said, well, we need to, at some point, I'll bring donuts from Donut Plant. Madeline, you bring donuts from Dough, and we'll taste. And then at some point, we just decided Kenny Fedorka needs to be a part of this. Because, I mean, I imagine most people watching these will have met you, and I think they'll be like, that makes
Yeah.
sense. And so
Yeah.
we go to Kenny's apartment, and we had said 2 to 3 donuts, but we each brought 3. And then Kenny, being the generous soul that he is, was like, I want to contribute, and brought Dunkin' Donuts.
As the
So
control
we had
group.
9 donuts amongst the three of us, and we divided them into threes, into like little thirds, and passed them out. And it was honestly, I mean, it was weird. I remember at the time, just like we made it weirder than it needed to be, because we were at this giant wooden table, and there's no other lights on except this one light. That's like, we're in this like, I mean, it was like in Spectre, where like you could barely see people, and we have these donuts, and we weren't just like, all right, okay, yeah, that's good. Like we analyzed, like even just the like plain glaze from Dunkin' Donuts, we went on for like half an hour. The chocolate on some of the donuts is melting. I mean, it was really,
Oh man.
it was so strange, but it was great. I mean, I will remember that forever. And so, yeah, I think food, not coincidentally, is a part of so many people's memories and so many of the most distinct memories. The fact that, I think food can tie you to a culture in certain ways. If you like, I'm Jewish. My mom is Jewish. That's how I'm Jewish. I've been to synagogue like once in my life. I never had a bar mitzvah. Like I don't know anything about this religion. My tie to it has a lot to do with the food. Has a lot to do with just like feeling connected during a Passover Seder. Like these are like, if I know people who are immigrants, who have like left places, come to the United States when they were infants, and their connection to where they're from is their food. That it's something you can bring in. I know smell is the scent that is most linked to memory. If we smell something, smell and then taste are the two most likely to trigger a memory response, more than seeing something, more than hearing something, more than feeling something. And I think that anyone out there, if you think about like what are defining moments in a friendship that you have, what are memorable nights, what are memorable moments in your life, you're gonna have something that hinges on food in some capacity.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Well, and also,
really amazing.
and also, we would just be like, I think it started because it was like, oh, like, I mean, Miles knows like so many. I mean, he's lived there his whole life. He knows so many different places around the city. He goes to see so many films and so many movies, and is so culturally up on the scene. Like, more than anyone else I know, truly. Which is, I mean,
I watched an obscene amount of movies.
I mean, it's like really awesome. I think it's just like, yeah, it's awesome to be the person who knows the culture, and so you're just like such, and you're just goofy and fun, and like you can just talk, and I mean, you're, like, yeah, I mean, whenever, things have, we can just like talk a lot, and
yes,
yeah, and
this is gonna be more than the 15 minutes that YouTube
yeah.
allows.
Yeah, I think it's already. But I think that's why food is the first of all, like, I'm primed to talk about food because I'm literally eating cheese and
yes
stuff. So I'm psychologically primed for it. But I also think that too, like, a big part of me moving to the city and learning about the city was from your recommendations and us going and hanging out and
well, and it's the dining scene in New York is really indicative of a lot of New York, in that there's these multitudes contained within the city.
Chelsea Market,
Yeah,
like,
I mean, which is one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can find every possible cuisine somewhere in New York, even if it's just like a little hole in the wall place that's like way out in Queens somewhere. You can find, I think, I wouldn't be surprised if you could find every possible cuisine represented. But also, I think in terms of the types of people living here in New York, you can find, I mean, we have like some of the most amazing high-end restaurants in the world, but also like places that you can get like 15 dumplings for a nickel. Like, really, if New York is frequently touted as being a very expensive place to live, and it absolutely is. I'm not going to deny that, but you can also, if you know where to look, there are ways to really thrive on a budget
Now,
here.
I want to
Yeah,
ask you, a
yeah,
question because
yeah,
since I've known you,
yeah.
you've always said that anyone who doesn't choose to live in New York what is the phrase again? I'm so
Yeah,
bad.
no, it's a John Updike quote, because I will say I don't think New York is for everybody,
Right, yeah, yeah. And I
and
want to
I don't want to be
pick
that
your well, I
guy.
want to pick, but I want to
But
pick your brain about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, John Updike has a quote that when I heard it, I just went, oh, that I get it. Where he said, "The true New Yorker secretly believes deep down that anyone who lives anywhere else must in some way be kidding." And I love that, because yeah, and I think that it isn't distinct to New York, because so many places, and I think especially cities, because cities tend to have a very strong sense of identity. Um, so I think a lot of places have that mentality, but New Yorkers are right. And and I think that it's really, I think that it's a place that there's so much going on at any time. And I've been to other big cities, and I like a lot of other places. I love a lot of places. I don't know if I'll live in New York my whole life. I think that if I were to get work somewhere else, I would live somewhere else, and I'd be very happy with it. But I don't know. I mean, I think that the people who identify as New Yorkers really have that strong sense of it,
Yeah,
even
pride.
even when they live elsewhere. I think there are people who still feel very strongly, I am a New Yorker, who have such strong connections to the
So
city.
do you so
Yeah,
now like after now being back in New York and
yeah,
after going to grad school and coming back and having a little break from it and but now
yeah,
being back for I guess 3 years, like
yeah.
do you think like how has your oh this is great. How is this is why I don't plan questions because they're just
Yeah,
better off the bat, is like
it's
in like
it's
what
more organic.
absolutely it's just more true, sincere and authentic. What like how do you think for you New York has changed?
Mm,
Um, well, how has it changed culturally since you've been back from grad school, I guess?
yeah,
And also,
yeah.
so like macro, but also for you, how has it changed personally for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's at the moment, obviously New York is very different because we're in quarantine. Remember that 50 years from now? Yeah, so I mean, like I said, so much of New York is what is happening in New York. We have so many artists who are not creating at the moment. We have so many, again, like the restaurants, these, which is a gateway to so many of the cultures that are here, are either not open or not accessible. I don't see the people. I mean, if you've never people watched in New York City, it's the most amazing thing. And we're all kind of sectioned off from that. And that's very difficult. Um, it's a difficult thing. And I think things like at 7 o'clock, people bang on their pots and pans
Mm.
and yell out their windows. It's a wonderful moment. I mean, it's really a lovely thing, of a reminder of the energy that's out there. I know I have two friends who neither are from New York. They've lived here a few years. They're going to be moving out at the start of July. And I think that there are things they like about New York. They've never wanted to live here. But talking to them, they've said that is something I will miss. Is
Is that
is
is that
figuring.
Taylor? Is
No,
Taylor?
no, no. Jeff and Elizabeth. also
Jeff, that's right.
Kenyan
Yeah.
people. And yeah, and they were I mean, they love that.
I was thinking
The
I was
Southern
thinking
Climate.
Jeff Taylor, right? That's his last name, right?
Yes, yeah,
I was
yeah.
thinking his name was Taylor, but it was
Well, and
Jeff.
because my friend Taylor has also moved out, is now in
Right.
Colorado. So all the Taylors are leaving, and our clothes are going to fit poorly. But we puns.
Stop.
That's the other thing. Lots of puns and food and movies, and that's me. But yeah, it's. I think that it is an interesting time, and that the city is going to be different when this is done. And the closest comparison I can make is September 11th, 2001. I grew up here, and I think I took a lot of living here for granted in a lot of ways. It's the thing, there's the joke, another Kenyan thing from the David Foster Wallace's commencement speech, where there's two fish swimming by, and one says to the other, "How's the water?" And the other says, "What's water?" And when you're surrounded by something, but it's all you take it for granted. We're flying.
Hold on,
New
we are
York
lagging a
was.
little bit.
Oh no.
Okay.
How are we okay?
I think we're okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I think people often ask me, they're like, "Oh, what was it like growing up in New York?" And it was very normal to me. It wasn't. I wasn't aware that everybody is going to grow up here. When I was a little kid, I think that 9/11 was really the first time I was very aware of a city identity. It was the first time I was really aware of the city coming together in a certain way over a sense of grief and over a sense of resilience. I mean, being in New York in the wake of that was truly an amazing experience. And then shortly after September 11th, I filmed a movie in Sweden, starting in January of 2002.
I actually have a Lars von Trier corner here of movie posters.
Oh,
Melancholia and Nymphomaniac over here.
I mean,
yeah.
who doesn't have a Lars von Trier corner? Oh my goodness.
Hey, I don't agree with his beliefs, but I do think he's an amazing movie maker.
Yeah, he's complicated, and I will say, I mean, it was an amazing experience being a part of the film. But
Miles was in Dogville. He didn't say it, but he was in Dogville.
I was spanked by Nicole Kidman, and people eventually find this out, and it's difficult to think of me in any other context once some people find out. But anyway, I on top of just being this amazing experience, where I mean, the cast is a bunch of famous people, celebrities, but also those incredible actors that you just see in everything, and then icons of cinema. I mean, Lauren Bacall is in this, and then there's me, and it's really funny on the Wikipedia page for Dogville, where it's like the cast, it's like 50 people, and then me with no link to my name. But it was amazing. But another thing that was amazing about it was the first time I had really lived for an extended amount of time somewhere else. And
how long were you away?
In the middle of winter is 7 weeks.
Wow.
7 weeks. And I still have my Dogville jacket, because they gave everybody jackets, because they said, we don't care if you have like this top of the line North Face thing. Any jacket that you bring is not going to be warm enough for what you're about to experience. And they were right. I mean, and it's fun because the jacket, it doesn't look like it would be the warmest garment I've ever try it on, but it really is. But yeah, while we were there, my mom went over with me because I was 12, and we befriended uh, we befriended a few families that were there. There was a little cafe that was right by our hotel, and we went there the first day, and we talked to them, and we became quite friendly with both the family that owns the cafe, but then also a woman named Katerina, who was just in the cafe and gave us her contact information. She was a school teacher, and we spent time with her family, but we also, like, I went into the school and talked. And it was really interesting because it was in the wake of George W. Bush's election. And, after 9/11, sentiment towards Americans was really bad. And, people would ask us questions of like, well, how did you elect him? And my mom would always say, well, we didn't. And it was very interesting, the reactions to, oh, well, being an American, but then, oh, you're from New York. And it was a totally separate thing. And they were very excited about that. And yeah, I think just when you're away from something, you naturally are going to get more appreciation for that thing. So I think that it was combined with the sense of identity that arose in New York after September 11th, combined with just personally that being a time that I was away. It's when I really became aware of how much the city meant to me and how much of a part of me it really was and really is. And then just little things like, going to school in Ohio and coming back and for the first time noticing how beautiful the architecture is. It's easy to kind of just think, oh, it's these ugly big buildings. But no, I mean, New York has incredible architecture, which is something I didn't realize until really, really late in my life. And I think, I joked before, I'm like, well, New Yorkers are right. I think that any city specifically, and most locations are going to have people who really feel very strongly about that place. I do think, just like with anywhere, the way that manifests itself is a very specific type of thing. And I think what maybe sets New York apart is that it's the only place I know of that people feel that sense of connection from visiting it.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Wow.
And to be fair, like, people will fall in love with Paris. Oh, I went to Paris, I loved it. This is it. London certainly has that. I mean, there are cities throughout the world and places throughout the world that people will feel a connection to. Tokyo, I mean, people definitely feel a kinship with it, and will arrive and be like, I'm home. And so I'm biased because I'm in New York, and so I experience people feeling that more. But I don't know, albeit coming from a very specific place, which I think is really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, too, you were going to the Stuyvesant High School. Were you? No, you weren't at the Stuyvesant school when 9/11
Yes.
happened.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, I was in middle school. Yeah, but I eventually went to Stuyvesant. But
because
luckily
Stuyvesant,
for me, I was
for
not.
people who
I
don't
was
know,
Stuyvesant. Yeah,
Stuyvesant is right next to, well, where Ground Zero
yeah.
is or was, or but where was your middle
Right.
school?
It was on 108th Street. It wasn't
Oh,
close.
okay.
My dad worked at Pace University, which is right by Ground Zero. Um,
Oh, hold on. This thing keeps lagging here, Miles.
and so he was very affected by it. Stuyvesant High School, booping.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we
Yeah.
lagged there for a sec. Yeah, could you
Okay.
just repeat that last thing?
Uh, no, I was asking by
Oh,
frozen.
oh,
I
yeah,
was
you
I was
were.
just talking about the lag.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's
So we
great
missed
because
nothing.
Oh, so yeah, you were frozen, and then
Yeah,
but your voice kept going, but then
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
you know, the lag.
It's the wonders of technology. But yeah, Stuyvesant High School, which is where I eventually attended, uh, is right by that area, and it's a huge building. Stuyvesant has over 3,000 students in it. My class year was 788 students, and there were protests because it was such a small class. And like the year after me, I think it was like 860 students in the class. So huge, huge building, huge student body. And the idiot who was principal at the time, and then also while I was there, a guy named Stanley Titel, who really, I mean, he retired, but retired while under investigation. And the investigation said, you can never work as an educator in the state of New York,
No way.
which was so cathartic. And I only wish it had happened before he'd retired. But he went over the loudspeaker and he said, run for your lives.
No, no, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
Wait,
I
during
mean,
9/11?
during
Oh my
9/11.
God.
And he was like, well, I needed to get people out and I didn't want to have to explain it, but I just knew people had to run.
Run
He was
for
an
your
idiot.
lives.
He was an idiot. He probably still is. But
Miles.
that's not what he was investigated about, by the way. But
Well, you
yeah,
can
I
only
mean,
imagine.
I forget the name of it, but I know an English teacher I had, a creative writing teacher there, Annie Toms, who I imagine might still be there, probably still is, and was and is fantastic. She worked with a lot of students who had lived through this to collect their stories and put it together. She had them write poetry. She had them try to expand upon this, and it was published. And I mean, the Stuyvesant Spectator won awards for journalism in the wake of this and their coverage of this. Again, I love communities, and I think the Stuyvesant community at the time did really come together to process this. When I was a freshman at Stuyvesant, the senior class had been freshmen during 9/11. And I think too that like they had just started. This New York school system starts really late. We start in September. Like I had been at my middle school for I think less than a week. I think 6 days. And
Yeah, that's right.
certainly, I have a weirdly funny 9/11 story that I forget. Have I
Yes.
ever told you my 9/11 story?
No, but I'm up for a laugh about
Yeah.
9/11.
So I'm in middle school. I was 11, and we had just started the school, and there was a teacher at my middle school named Miss Walls, and she was very bad. She had taught humanities, and which you had twice a day because it
What?
was English and history.
Oh,
So humanities was like the teacher you spent the most time with, and she was bad, and there had been many complaints about her. But she'd been with the school a long time. She had tenure. They couldn't fire her, so they made her the geography teacher. Now, before I arrived, geography had not been a subject. It had not been a core subject. And the year after, so she taught geography in 6th grade. We had her once a week. And then when I was in 7th grade, they made her a gym teacher, and nobody taught geography. It was
it
thrown
was
in the
gone.
humanities. So it was very much, and geography didn't count towards our GPA. It was really like very much we need to put her somewhere. And because we had the day that we normally had geography had been like our first or second day, and it was all orientation. So we had not had geography yet. September 11th was going to be our first day having geography. I know.
Oh my God.
And before geography, we had math. And it was during our math class that like people started leaving. And it was that like the administrative people were coming in and saying the name of a student, and the student would get up and leave. And like one of my really good friends was in the class, and I like saw his mom in the hall, and I was like, what? And then like the students would basically go into the hall, come back, grab all their stuff, and leave. And it was weird, and we didn't know what was going on. Our teacher
Yeah.
didn't know what was going on.
That's the same
Just
in
continued.
high school
But
too.
it was
No one
like,
knew.
yeah, oh, completely. But it was like after 6 people, we were all like, what is happening? And by the way, I know somebody who was in school in DC at the time, and they were all like taken out of class. They were thrown in the auditorium, and they were all saying like, what is happening? What is happening? And the reason that they were told was, oh, there's bad traffic. So your people are picking their students up early. And that was what they, because, and it's, we still as a society don't understand that kids can handle a lot and that it's actually beneficial to give them information,
Yeah.
which is something I believe very strongly. We can get into that, but I want to finish my story.
That's a
So we finished math. We're waiting to go into geography, and we're all saying like, what's going on? Nobody has any idea. And the head of our program, because there were a few programs within the school building, that of our program was a guy named Mr. Lucena, who was wonderful. I mean, I'm mentioning these bad educators. He was a great figure in my education. And he was just this really jolly guy who really cared about the students in the school. And he walks by and he's just like so pale. And we say, Mr. Law, what's wrong? Like, what's happening? And he's in a rush, and he said, and he just looks to us, he goes, a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. And he continues on his way. And we're like, what does that, like, by mistake? Like, we don't know what's going on. And I remember that was a big thing, is after the first one, people were like, was this just an error somehow? Like,
yeah, like an accident, right? Exactly.
So we didn't know. Yeah, and we didn't know. I'm thinking like, that's near where my dad works. We go into the room, and Miss Walls like gets us in. We're all just talking, and we're like, oh my god, and and it was at the time that like not everyone had a cell phone. Like I had, it was a big deal when my mom got me one, and it was very much like, you keep it off, you only ever use it for emergencies.
Yeah, that was me at 14. That was my first one.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't carry it with me. It was in my backpack in the other room, in like my homeroom. And Miss Walls goes in and she puts up her hand and she goes, a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. The police are saying terrorists. They want us all to remain calm. Now, since this is the first time I've had you, I want to get to know your names. We're going to play a name game. I want you to think of a geographical location that starts with the same letter as your name. So I'm West Virginia Walls. All right, you're going to go first. And we're all just sitting there dumbfounded. And the thing is, like, I can understand the idea of like,
name game.
I need to try and manage this. Like, let's try and distract you. But like, she would get annoyed at us when we'd be like, what do you mean terrorists? Like, what is going on?
What is a terrorist? Yeah, you were like 11 years old.
Yeah. And we're just, and it was, so we had so many questions, and and then like, because kids were distracted. So like, it was a thing that the first person would be like, I'm Kentucky Kenny. And then the next person would say, he's Kentucky Kenny and I'm Manhattan Miles. And then this person's like, I'm Tennessee Taylor and that's Manhattan Miles and that's Kentucky Kenny. And like, we didn't know. We were not doing this. And West Virginia Walls is being like, oh, come on. Like, that's an easy one. Luckily, then my mom came in and left.
I got you.
Rescue me. Oh my God, this woman, West Virginia Walls. I mentioned she was a gym teacher, and it was we would frequently, like, she'd make us run an arbitrary number of laps around the perimeter of the gym. And then, like, we would just do free time. And it was like, you can open up the equipment room, grab what you can, do stuff. And I didn't care. So me and my friend William would play badminton. That was our go-to. And we'd just be in the corner, like,
that's great,
hitting a birdie back and forth. And then in 7th grade, there were a group of kids playing football, and one of them jumped to grab the football and then, like, lands and slides into my leg, and, like, with such force that it broke.
No way! I didn't know this.
Yeah, and then I'm lying there, and I'd never broken a bone before, but it's like, when you break a bone, you're just like, oh, that is broken now. And I'm there, and I'm just like, oh, my leg's broken. And West Virginia Walls comes over. She's like, Miles, your leg is not broken. If it was broken, you wouldn't be able to move it. I was like, well, I can't move it, Miss Walls. And then, because there were wheelchairs in the room, and she wouldn't give me one. And her reasoning was that there were like 4 steps to get up to where the nurse's office was. And she's like, well, so I can't give you the wheelchair because you're going to have to go up those steps. And I remember my friend Mwanza and a guy named Jesse, who I, like, didn't know very well, but they, like, came over, and I was, like, on their shoulders, hobbling over. And then we passed by the security guards, and they're like, what is happening? And they gave me their, like, wheelie swivel chair. And they pushed me over to the nurse's office on that.
West Virginia Walls thinks that we should all pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, huh?
She also, yeah. Well, and then I would spend gym, like, chilling with my homeroom teacher, who was our science teacher, and just, like, talking to him. And then Miss Walls got upset because everybody needed to take that presidential fitness test. Yep. And I was like, well, I can't do that because, like, 1, it's like 4 flights of stairs down to the gym. 2, my leg's broken. And she was like she thought I was trying to get out of it. And
Miles.
And so it was a thing where, so she said, well, you can't do everything, but you can do, because you had to, like, either do 10 pull-ups or, like, cling to the bar for, like, 30 seconds. And she made me do that.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Like, I go down and, like, go over, and, like, they literally had to hoist me up to the floor. Just, like, cling there, and I'm thinking, like, if I fall, this is bad.
Oh, that's good.
So I clung to it for doing it, and then go down. And then, like, a couple months later, my crutches were off, but I was still, like, in physical therapy, and I could, like, hobble around a little bit. And she made me run a mile.
No, that's a good.
The fitness test, she's like, you can do it now. I'm like, no, I can't, like, I can't run. I can
amazing,
walk slowly.
Miles.
And because it was again arbitrary, where she just claimed that, like, 20 times around the perimeter of the gym was a mile. This was never confirmed. But that's what she made me do. And because everybody else had already done this, the plan was that everyone else can just watch.
No.
And what people did was they would go up to talk to her, and I would get, like, 6 students forming a barrier. And this, I never asked them to do this. They all just figured this out on their own. And I'm so grateful to my 7th grade classroom. But, like, 6 of them would go up to talk to her, so they couldn't see, so I could just, like, cut across the gym.
Oh my God.
It was really a ridiculous.
That's amazing. That's great.
She's the person who really first broke the news of 9/11 to me.
She's really an inspiration for you. It sounds like she's a role model of educational excellence.
But you know what, Kenny? To be fair, I don't know her. I don't remember her real first name. I knew it at one point. I remember West Virginia Waltz. So that name game exercise
That's amazing. Yeah,
actually
yeah, it
perfected.
worked. Yeah, it worked. It worked. Oh my God.
Oh my
Did you
God.
did you
Yeah.
have did you have like do you feel like you had a really good education early on, or just
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think I I can't say no because I was very lucky
yeah,
in my
like
education.
compared to like the whole of everyone, like yeah,
Yeah, I mean, look, I only went to public school in New York, but I was always in accelerated programs, and um, and I was lucky. I mean, I had some bad teachers later on. Stuyvesant High School is such a grab bag. There are some amazing teachers, and there are some really terrible ones. But like I really liked all of my teachers in elementary school. Um, but I think that the system is flawed. I also, it's difficult for me to really be gung-ho about some of the programs I was in because they were very exclusionary.
mm,
There's a lot of renewed discussion about the way that education is done in New York. I mean, New York City has one of the most segregated education systems in the world, or certainly in the country. It's really bad, and so it's tough. I am certainly grateful for the opportunities I was given. I'm grateful for the resources I had access to. I have the knowledge that not everybody had access to that. Um, but yeah, education needs a fix. I will say, I mean, in terms of high school, for people who don't know, Stuyvesant High School is a very well-known school. You need to take a test to get in, which could very well not be the case if we revisit this interview in a few years' time, because it's really controversial, and there have been big pushes to change the admissions to Stuyvesant. But yeah, it was. I had some really bad teachers that were there, and
is that
specifically,
because of tenure, you think?
well, I mean, my theory, the best department at Stuyvesant, in my experience, was the English department. The teachers were phenomenal. The worst department for me was math.
Geography.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
okay.
geography. No, but the worst part was
Math.
math. I, as a kid, was naturally very good at math, um, and had always it had always been my best subject. And then I went to Stuyvesant, and the first half of the first semester did really well because it was all stuff I knew. And then we got to a point that we needed to have learned new things, and I struggled because it was not taught. And Stuyvesant is a specialized high school for math and science.
Is
And
it?
I think
Oh,
there are students who come in who are nuclear physicists by the time they're admitted to the school. There are some absolute geniuses that go there. I think that the energies of the math and science department, with exceptions, I should say, specifically, I had one really good math teacher. I had a few really good science teachers. Um, but I think that a lot of if you're a teacher and you have select students in your class who are brilliant, they're where your energy is sometimes going to go. And Stuyvesant tends to do really well in the Intel competition, the big science competition for high schoolers. I frankly don't think that has much to do with the teaching. It has to do with the students. And that's the thing that I'm most grateful about for going to Stuyvesant. Even though I had some really wonderful teachers who I'm really glad I had, the single thing that I think was valuable about my high school experience was the student body.
mm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
I went to high school with kids who I know are going to change the world, either publicly or privately, and that's a really cool thing, and it's a really valuable thing. That was the best part of Stuyvesant for me. But I mean, frankly, I did I had always been a really good student, and I struggled my first 2 years there because for the first time I was not really learning and was finding that there were not resources being made available to help me. One of my math teachers, who was the worst teacher I've ever had, was a guy named Mr. Usoro, and I ended up having him 3 times.
Oh God, that's the
Stuyvesant,
worst.
yeah. And his thing was I showed up to tutoring and he said, no, go. Like he didn't want me there. I don't know what, like I'm coming to him as a student saying, I'm wanting to learn. I know I'm struggling with this. And he just said, oh, I can't teach you. And his thing was that the students who were failing, I mean, my test average was maybe in the 50s. And he gave me an 80 in the class. Well, I had him the first semester and had done well the first part of it, so my average was higher. But the other 2 times I had him, he gave me an 80, which he basically just was like, well, don't complain. I'm giving you an okay grade. And, but of course, that put me in trouble when I then had to go on to the next teacher and I didn't have these foundational things. And it was really difficult. I think that it wasn't until the second semester of my junior year that I just made the decision that, I can't be so invested in this for my own mental health. I can't be so concerned about what I cannot control. And that helped me academically. I did really well following that. It helped me socially. I was far more comfortable finding a place at the school. Like I had friends who were my year, but the longest lasting friendships I've had from high school were students who were 2 or 3 years below me. Through extracurriculars. But that was a very important thing for me to find and to learn, is that if I know that I'm committing myself to something and somebody else isn't, me trying harder is not gonna, when I don't know what I'm doing, is not gonna be able to fix it.
Well, and I kind of want to connect that actually to that. Yeah, that's well said. And I want to connect that to like acting education and like connecting like an acting theater education to
I'm gonna turn on my air
world. Yeah, that's fine. Hey. Oh, Miles, I'm just going to pause this for a second because we have an exterminator here.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to check my bathroom.
So. Sounds good.
About 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, yeah, that's cool. Fine. Oh, actually, okay.
Yeah, I'll open those doors so we can go around and dozen.
That's fine. Yeah, come in and do whatever you need to do. Yeah. Sorry, we found a little bug that was crawling around, and then he scooted under.
They're not.
Yeah, can you believe it?
Giant rodents.
They one crawled underneath one of our walls.
Yep.
And we freaked out. I mean, we had cockroach issues before, but they were near the pipes, and usually they do come in like through the pipes and stuff. But I had no idea, at least from what I knew, and then I had no idea that they would actually, that there, a little slit in the wall they could crawl.
Yeah.
That's not something that even I didn't even comprehend. But anyway, I was going to ask you. So some guys will probably be coming in and looking in my.
That's okay.
Bathroom. Hey, the more the merrier.
Exactly.
But at least with like.
Offer them cheese.
Yeah. Here, want wrappers? Lick them. But yeah.
So you don't eat the skins. when you
No,
have
yeah, the cheese skin. I do
Yeah.
not eat the cheese skin.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I do hear that that is a delicacy in Europe. But I wish I were more cultured
I
to
wish I
like.
were more cultured to just ingest plastic.
Hey, I'll do what I have to. But yeah, but like at least with acting and like,
Yeah.
like like your grad school and my grad school and connecting to
Yeah.
right connecting that education to actually getting work and getting representation and
Yeah.
management, which has been an issue for you, I know, and certainly for me and for many
Yeah.
other actors, that go to non-Ivy League conservatories. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that, basically that aren't like Brown, NYU, Yale, Juilliard, um, Old Globe,
Yeah.
um, ACT, right? Like for like, what do you think needs to happen to be able to connect to have a better education system? Yeah,
I mean, yeah. I think that I mean the change needs to happen within the industry. Uh, I think that well, and one, I mean, I think that grad schools in general can do a better job of preparing students for the outside world. And I think it's difficult because I know I went to the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School in the UK, which I loved and had a really valuable time there. But and they acknowledged that the education and the business side of things that they do, which frankly is more than most places, but can always be more. They've said it's difficult because that's not what we want you focusing on. The beauty of a grad school experience is that you're in this group that's working towards the same goals. You can focus on the craft, you can focus on yourself, and you're able to work on what you care about without having to think about the business side of things. That is the ideal. That can't happen because if you don't have the business side of things, you're screwed. There's not really anywhere to go. But I think it's just the industry. Nothing's going to change on the grad school end until the industry is welcoming of it. We have showcases, but there's only so many showcases people can go to. There's only so much that's there. And I mean, the Bristol Vic Theatre School,
I mean,
where I
you had a
went to,
great setup. You had a great setup after, I mean, to be performing at the Signature Theater on
well, and
42nd
that's
Street.
and that's the thing is this is a school that is a renowned school. I mean, our alumni are incredible. The training there is fantastic. And I would say, I mean, in the UK, it is very much on the
One of
level
the
of
Ivy
something
League.
like Yale or NYU or Juilliard here. It's one of the big ones. And the program that I did is different. It's shorter, but the training is
Top
comparable.
notch.
We're
Yeah.
working with the same tutors. We're focusing on the same things. The big difference is production. Because there your first year is training and then you go into production. And that's really the difference, the biggest difference between what we actually received. So there isn't, and when I go here, when I talk to people in the industry about being at the Bristol Vic Theatre School, there's awareness of it. People know the school, they know its reputation, they acknowledge it's a really good school. It also is not what's getting me in the door. It's also not
Right.
what's getting somewhere. And
Yeah.
I think that I think that things have changed a lot in casting, in that now things are digital. There's access to so much information that almost makes it difficult, in that it makes it difficult for casting directors and agents to really be aware of everything. It's almost there's almost too much opportunity for us to know how to handle it at the moment. And it also, I mean, it changes from day to day. I know there's now a thing on Actors Access that you can make like a video headshot or a slate headshot where instead of just a headshot, if you hover over it, the person just goes, Miles Purinton.
Dumb.
And I honestly, when I heard about it, I just on principle was like, I really hate that. I don't want to do it. But the people I know who've done it have said, I have seen a bump in like what I'm being called in for. Because
Really.
And I think a lot of it is that Actors Access, if you have that, you're kind of pushed up to the thing. So I think that it's difficult. I think that what grad schools can't do it on their own, programs can't do it on their own. There needs to be industry thing. So I think that the most valuable things that grad schools can do is try and engage an alumni network. There's an alum of my school who's in New York named Kate Siepert, who's phenomenal. And she kind of single-handedly has been trying to build a network of alums in New York. And she had kind of been like brought in to, do a Skype session before Zoom was a thing. Do a Skype session where you'll like talk about resumes with people. But luckily she's now like a permanent fixture for the school. It's an acknowledge that she is somebody who is here to help. I think those are the most valuable things. And because we work, projects always jump out from a thing. You're
right.
going to get an agent more likely if the agent sees you in something. They're more likely to see you in something if one of their clients is in something with you and you can go in. I mean, I had a meeting with an agent here who I was referred to. We had a great conversation and they basically were like, you seem really great. We'd be interested in working with you. We need to see you in something to get a sense of you.
Right.
And then the next show that I did, I invited them to. They weren't able to make it. So it's
that makes me so mad.
It's a difficult thing, and I think that this agent, I believe that they have an interest. I believe they want to make that connection. I also believe they couldn't make it to the show. So it is very difficult, and I think that what a grad school kind of needs to do, the way they can be most effective now while the industry is not working with them, showcases are great. Most people don't get something meaningful right out of showcase.
Right.
In my little graduating cohort that was here, one person got an offer from an agent who they freelanced with and didn't get a single thing with and are no longer working with. So the showcases are great. I think it's easy to look at them as like, oh, this is the end all and be all, but just the casual alumni network is a more valuable thing for me. And I know there's a theater company that my girlfriend who also was in the program, Stephanie, and I work with this company. Steph ended up being in a position to help cast a reading and reached out to somebody who was a year ahead of us in the program because we'd met and we thought, oh, this is somebody who'd be good in this role. So there are connections that can happen through that I think are more likely to happen if you approach it just from a showcase or educational setting. I think a major change in terms of acting education needs to be that people cannot go to an MA program because they think it'll help their career. It will, it can. I know for me it did, because I had stalled. I had a difficult situation where, because I was a child actor, I think I was very naive in that my career as a child actor was really good. I worked with some amazing people, some amazing companies. Trying to reinsert myself into the city and into the industry from a very different context was incredibly difficult. And I I was very excited because there's a lot of casting directors who still remember me from that time, still that I'm still in touch with, but that wasn't translating to actual work. And most of the things that people do when they're new to an industry, things like, oh, I'll take this little unpaid show that it's like, a production of Romeo and Juliet that's going on in like the back room of a daycare center that they don't use on weekends,
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, that was stuff that I couldn't do because I was already in 2 different acting unions. And so I was in a position where my resume was on a different level than I was on. And it was difficult for me to try and navigate that. And I completely stalled. I wasn't just not working. I wasn't doing anything to put myself into the work. And they were things that I knew I needed to be doing to help my career, but I wasn't.
And that, I kind of, finish your thought.
But, well, no, and just saying that going to grad school was very much a restart for me. It helped me, honestly, one, just realize that I'm good at this. Because, I would have bursts of activity beforehand where I'd be like, oh, go, moving, and then it would all fall flat. And it is very easy in this industry to kind of go, if I'm not getting things, does that mean I'm delusional?
Yeah.
Because you see those people out there who you go, oh, this person has no business doing this. And of course you think, I'm not like that. But that person doesn't think that they're like that either. Going to grad school and thriving there was a very validating thing for me. So it did help me with my career. I think too, I do think getting training, I know there are people who poo-poo, masters, MFAs, and see it as really a waste of time, but you need to have some level of training because it allows you, training isn't going to make you good, but training will help you be the best version of yourself you can be. It doesn't give you talent. You can be talented without it.
That's
but
right.
There was an artist that I saw do a show who I have mutual friends with, and I don't want to name names. This guy's very talented, very creative, and people flock to this person because they're very intelligent, they're very creative, they're really doing things that are exciting. They're making their own work. There's somebody that I think people naturally want to work with. I saw a 1-person show that they did and was really excited because the house was filled with people who were like clearly invested in this. And I watched the show and it was very clear that this person as a performer and a writer was good. They clearly had talent. There were also basic things that if they had had training would have made it a far better show. It's a 1-person show. They're playing multiple characters. Their physicality didn't change. Their voice would occasionally change, but not really. And having training and learning how to access these things, you're taking care of your instrument. You're learning these things. And so I saw in this person, a person whose talent and potential was far greater than the product that was being seen. And sure enough, they'd gone to college, but they didn't have a master's thing. And I'm sure in their mind, they're doing well, they're creating their work. I haven't spoken to this person. They might have been applying to things. But I could see this being a person who really feels like this isn't something I need to do. I'll also say when I talk about training doesn't have to be a master's program. Those are expensive. They're not for everybody. Not everybody learns in that environment. And frankly, there were some master's programs out there that really suck. But you can take a class. You can teach yourself. You can, get books from the library. There are things that you can do to focus. If this person studied Linklater, and I don't know if Linklater is my favorite technique, but just if they had studied some sort of vocal training in capacity, and there are ways that you don't you don't need to go to a master's to do that. But I just know that they wouldn't have been more talented, but their work would have been better for it.
Mm.
And so I think training is important. For me, a master's was the right thing to do for my scenario, and I think Bristol was the right place for me to be. I really responded to the training that was there. And so I think it's a tough thing, because I think responsibly acting masters courses would be, there needs to be more to teach you about the business, or you're not going to be equipped to survive in the industry. However, I also kind of think like you're not going away for 1, 2, 3, 4 years to study the business of acting. Like these are programs designed for training. They're designed to help you focus on your craft. And that needs to be why you go. And if you're going because you go, well, then I'll get a showcase and that's how I'm going to get my in.
Well, things could get fucked up. You could get a pandemic could hit and your showcase could be canceled after 3 years, which is why some people came here. Yeah, it sucks for them.
But completely. But I mean, it's the same thing of like, if you're playing sports and you go to a school for the sports team and then you break your arm.
Right.
Or break your leg because a football player slides into you during your badminton practice. Your opportunities are important. And I don't want to suggest, certainly when I was going to grad schools, I was thinking this will help my career. And it did. And I think that it would be stupid to not consider that at all. But if the reason that you're going is because you go, this is what's going to get me cast, this is what's going to get me an agent, you're not going to be getting the most out of the experience, and you're going to be disappointed. I mean, we talk about Yale, NYU, and Juilliard here, which are kind of the triple crown in terms of just getting an in somewhere here. And I do think that they get an advantage when it's time to find places, but there are plenty of students who graduate from one of these programs, who thrive in these programs, who then don't get anything. And it's not a guarantee.
That's right. That's true. Yeah, there's a guy who I clowned with actually, who went to Juilliard, and he had worked on like early on, he worked on things like some soap operas and stuff, and and worked with like Oscar Isaac on something, but then something happened, and what happened is I think he fell off his momentum, which is something that is a real thing in the industry.
And frankly, those are things that you're going to be, at least my grad school, because I don't think every school is like this, and I think the good ones are. A lot of acting school can feel like just therapy. You're working on yourself, and one, because to be an actor you need to be in tune with yourself and in tune with others. So if you're not capable of doing that for yourself, you're not going to be able to survive in an acting project in a capacity. But also it's a tough industry, and so if you can find satisfaction and complacency within yourself, it's going to be a lot easier to weather the rough patches that literally everyone is going to get. And I think since I've done a few things since graduating from grad school, but I am struggling. I've gone large periods of time where I haven't had anything except auditions. And I've gone periods of time where I haven't even had auditions. The difference is I have always felt committed to it. I have never felt stalled the way that I did before I went to grad school. I've never felt at a point where I will not be able to keep going again. I'm better about doing something for my career than I was before, when it was easy to just kind of say, well, if I'm not going to get anything, I shouldn't even try to do anything. And a lot of that is through techniques, just personal techniques on being a human.
Well, that's
But
great.
I
That's
can't.
actually a great, that leads me to exactly what I was going to ask you actually is what are
Yeah,
three, so two questions. Wow, I have so many thoughts that
yeah,
I kind of want to go back to, but right now, what are three habits that you're really proud of that you have? What are three bad habits that you have that you'd like to try to curb?
yeah, yeah. And this is just in life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think just because we're talking about acting. Um, I watch a lot of movies, and it can get a little obsessive. I'm one of those people that I'll hear like, this movie's bad, but this one person is who has like two scenes gives a really great performance, and I'll go, oh, I need to see that movie because I want to see the work of this one person. And then I'll watch it. I was like, oh,
I
that was
still need to
fun.
watch. I still need to find Decalogue.
Oh
I
yeah, yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. There were actually
You'll love Decalogue.
after you mentioned it, there were
Yeah,
two Wikipedia articles that I mentioned or that I read that talked and referred
that
to
referred
Decalogue.
to the
Yeah.
Decalogue.
So now it's
The,
like,
the Decalogue, for the people who stumbled upon this for the Kenny Fedorko content, the Decalogue is a 10-part miniseries from the Czech director Krzysztof Kozlowski, and it's one of the most brilliant things ever made. But yeah, I consume a lot of media, um, and I'm proud of it because in my life being as a storyteller and as an artist, and just in a capacity of show business in any regard, you need to watch things. um, I think it is the number one thing that it is easy for people to do, uh, and it's one of the number one things that people don't do. um, and you don't need to read every play that's on Broadway, but you should know what they are. You should know who's involved. This is something we've talked about a lot, Kenny.
yeah,
Um,
a
you
lot.
need to know who are notable theater directors if you are interested in theater. If
I
you're
think you're so I just want to just quickly jump
Yeah,
in and say I think that this is absolutely the thing that like no actors down here in Florida actually like really maybe one or two like
yeah,
really invest in. And it's true. You like to know what the culture is, the social movements, the
yeah.
people who are doing the work that you're interested in doing. Like you have
Well,
to know these things.
and I mean, and I think that if you're lucky when you study theater or film, you learn the history. Of course, you go to college, you read a Eugene O'Neill play, and they're like, "You got it, kid," and that history is important.
There's no theater history here. Not
Yeah.
one class on
Well,
it in this.
and I think you need to know the history because it's going to be referenced, but you also need to know the present because the present that's happening one place is going to happen elsewhere. Plays that are on Broadway or that do well regionally are going to be done in regional theaters everywhere.
Yeah,
And
especially Lord theaters, right?
and if you don't know where you fit in, that's gonna be really difficult.
Yeah, detrimental to yeah.
100%. Even just when you go into an audition, if you don't understand the cadence of certain playwrights, if you don't understand the vibe of certain playwrights, you're gonna get it wrong. I my When we were in college, I mentioned I wrote and directed my senior thesis, and there were funny moments in it, but it was fairly dramatic. A lot of it was a series of short plays. Some of them were overtly comedic. Some of them got really heavy, and I was known throughout Kenyon as a comedy guy because I mentioned we were doing student theater, which at the time there wasn't really a thing. And I think I said before, in part because of Brave Potato, there's now a lot of student theater there, which makes me very happy. But the shows that we were doing, we couldn't rely on an audience coming, so we were like, we need to do things like Rocky Horror Picture Show because if we do things that are funny, people are going to come to that instead of like a really good but maybe more obscure and difficult play. We can't guarantee people will come to see that. So I was known for comedy. A friend of mine came in to audition for my theater, or for my thesis, and I had to put out some monologues and scenes that I said, choose one of these that you'll do when you come in. And this friend of mine goes in, and the monologue he'd chosen was from a found text play that I did from a forum that was essentially AA meetings online. And it was a very intense emotional piece that starts with like, my name is Brandon. I've been an alcoholic for 8 years.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is this on YouTube?
I think it is on YouTube.
Actually,
yeah.
Actually, just send me the link and I'll.
Miles Purinton.
Yeah. Well, no.
Yeah.
Send it to me and I'll post it in the comment section.
I will do that. Yeah. But yeah, there was an intense thing, and it's this guy very earnestly talking about his relationship with alcohol. And my friend comes in, and he knows me as a comedic person, and he just assumed that my thesis was going to be really funny. And he starts delivering this monologue comedically. And there are no jokes in it. But he's like, my name is Brandon. I've been an alcoholic for about 8 years now. And it was horrific. It was such a bad choice. At the same time, he was delivering this in the way that he thought fit the vibe of the piece. And he eventually worked stage crew, and he spoke to me. He's like, oh, I got that wrong. So, I mean, that was not a good case of this, but you need to know the tone of what you're auditioning for. And if it's a new play, you can still get clues from just where it was put up. A show done at Playwrights Horizons is going to be very different from a show done at Roundabout.
So
yeah.
habit one is to be.
Habit one is oh my God.
Yeah, Miles, where have we gone?
Habit one is I think I'm very good at consuming media.
Okay.
In a way that is important to me as an artist, because I really think it's something that artists need to do. You need to know what's going on. I'm very happy I do that. I cook a lot, is something I'm really proud of. I think you need to know your way around the kitchen. You need to be able to survive. And yeah, I think it's a good thing for me to take that time in the kitchen if I'm doing something else and I need a break. It's a useful time. So
it's therapeutic for you.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if it's a habit necessarily, but
well, it's something
a practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a practice that I bring in, that I do.
Yeah, that's a habit. Yeah.
Yeah. See, these are the tougher ones, are the things that I'm.
Hold on, you still have one more good habit that you have to.
I know, Kenny. I like to walk.
Yes.
It's something I'm not really doing as much now. I like to walk. I think it's just a useful thing to do, especially in New York. You can walk pretty much anywhere.
We've had so many good memories walking.
Yeah. Kenny and I walked the length of Manhattan.
Love that. That was so much fun.
That was
I really love that.
And I'm as soon as I can be outside without a mask, I'm doing that. Because I need to. I love walking for myself, but also just, you see people, you see things, you get a sense of a place through walking, feeling that connection in your feet. I've never liked, when you go somewhere new, I've never liked bus tours and boat tours, because I'm like, I want to get a sense of the streets. I want to get a sense of actually navigating. So I love walking. I'm an avid walker, and it's something I really like to do. Habits that I'm not proud of. I have bitten my nails since my entire life.
Dude, yeah.
I've tried so many times to not do it. And I mean, I know there's the stuff you can paint on that tastes bad, but then what happens is like you put that on and go, yeah. Like you get over it. Like, and also
What do you,
because like by the time, yeah,
I was gonna say, what do you think that is? What is it a nervous thing? Is it an anxious thing? Is it a
I think it's both. I mean, I think that certainly it's a nervous thing, but it's also just it's a habit. It's something I do when I'm bored.
mm, mm.
Whenever I am seeing a show or watching a movie outside of this, I chew gum because otherwise I will bite my nails. And it
You
doesn't
know,
have to be like a thriller.
because
Um,
I have that same issue, Miles, and
yeah,
I've tried toothpicks. They help a little. I don't know if you've
yeah.
ever tried
Well, and
that.
I think that is because I don't I certainly have anxiety now, but I didn't have anxiety when I was 4 and biting my nails. So,
Interesting. Yeah.
but I think it's something that we pick up because it is not, we like having things in our mouths. And like, I love chewing gum. I love, uh, whenever I get a drink with ice, like I'm one of those people who choose the ice. So, and I'm sure I know Freud has shit to say about that, but I think it's just, it's, if I'm bored, if I'm not thinking about it, if my mind is allowed to wander, it's just like a go-to, whether it's for comfort or whether it's just, I'm bored, brain goes stimulus, stimulus, chew on your nails. So,
I mean, your mind works so fast. It's
yeah,
like how how like and
yeah.
that's something too that's interesting about you with movies is like it is a stimulus that's there where you can just like and you use it in a productive way and I
Yeah,
it's like how can what is a way to like trigger your mind to be able to be stimulated so that
yeah,
you aren't bored to bite and like I mean but that's yeah it's crazy it's but
yeah,
it's also such a gift that you have the mind that you do right because literally
yeah,
like you like I think you and Barack Obama are very similar in the sense that you literally like when asked a question you have like paragraphs of ideas like
yeah.
already structured and ready to be spoken about.
That's a habit I don't love about myself is I will just go on and on. I mean, I'm glad you encourage this, Kenny, and
I do, but I
and
because I
and
like
I do
listening
think
and
I think there are times that I have something to say, and then there's times that I'm just like, be concise, um, and that's I mean like I know with writing papers, for example, like in college, that was always a thing for me. Is I know a lot of people really struggle with writing, and then for me, I just am like, blah, 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 blah. Like I can't siphon off the work. I can't do things in installments. I'm just one of those. I'm like, I'm gonna write it all, and
what do you think that where do you think that comes from? What is like
I
is
have
yeah,
no idea. I have
interesting.
no idea.
That's fascinating. Is
Um,
that fascinating? That's so
It
fascinating
is.
to me.
It is.
I wish I had that.
I'll get to my other habit, but I'm going to go on a
Okay.
tangent now. I mentioned at the start of this because I'm a magic toy salesman, and what that means I work for a magic company that sells toys, and I work out of FAO Schwartz where I'll demonstrate various products, including several of the magic kits. And a lot of people are like, "You're a magician," and I'm very much not a magician because you really have to work hard to be a magician and to like pick up skills, and I haven't. But I'm an actor. I feel comfortable presenting things, and so I'm good at if I know how a trick works and it isn't difficult, I can sell the trick really well. And these are magic tricks. The things that I'm selling are like designed for children. So I'm good at that aspect. And I really enjoyed doing that work. I enjoyed doing these magic tricks, not just for kids, but for adults. I think it's a really wonderful thing. I've always enjoyed magic. I've enjoyed the excitement of like how having something impossible happen is an amazing thing. It's a really incredible thing for me. And so since I've had this job, I've learned a little bit more magic. You know, I've looked up other tricks that I can do, and I've really enjoyed that. And so much of that is learning how the brain operates when you go into magic. I mean, magicians kind of understand the human brain better than a lot of professions. And there's so much of it is things that you'll watch a trick, and then when you learn how it's done, you go, there's no way I wouldn't have noticed that, because it's so common sense. I mean, I don't want to give away any magic secrets, but there's things that, like, if you have somebody pick a card and then distract them for a bit and then tell them their card is somewhere else than where they put it, they'll believe you. The brain will be tricked. And so much of it is that our brain absorbs so much information. It is constantly being sent signals and stimulus from our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, our skin, which is everywhere.
Yeah.
And the brain's job is to present us with what is most efficient. And this is why magic works, because our eye can send you the impulse of, this guy is putting it in his pocket. But if your brain is being presented something else through misdirection, your brain is like, okay, that's much more important. And so even though your eye 100% sees me as I take the thing and I put it in my pocket, your brain doesn't register it, because your brain has this impossible job of figuring out, like that, what is the most important thing for you. It's why you can be in a crowded room, and if you hear your name, you'll suddenly hear it. Even though it's noisy, because your brain is getting every single sound that is out there. But your name is one that your brain goes, that's important. I need to signal that. And so it's a beautiful thing. The reason magic tricks work is in part because your brain really doesn't work well, but also because it works really well. It's really good at finding that information. It's really bad at presenting you with everything. And I mean, there's the many experiments that are done where, like, you focus on something, you're told to focus on something, and then a guy in a gorilla costume walks through the room.
Yeah.
And people aren't going to notice it. And then when you know to notice it, you're looking for it, and you're like, oh my gosh.
I'm going to post that thing on the comment section too.
It's great. It's so great. And I mean, it's tough, because once you know it, you know it. But there are also, I mean, I know there are videos that are done where it seems like that, but then there's an extra thing that you're not going to notice. I recently saw this, possibly the best magician in the world is a guy named Darren Brown, and he did a show, a live show on Broadway that I went to
recently.
See. He did that.
When?
Yeah.
Wait, when?
It was called Secret. It was in the winter.
Oh my God, dude, you've been talking about him forever.
Yeah, and it was amazing to see him live. And he did this. He put a banana on the stage, and he said, at some point, someone in a gorilla costume is going to walk through and get this. And I'm of course that person that I was like, I want to see it. And I would regularly check, and the banana would be there. And I'd be like, okay. And I was checking constantly. And then there was a moment, and I remember I had checked, and then maybe like 5 minutes later, I was like, wait a minute, it's going to be gone. And I looked, and it was gone. And I did not see it happen. But I think my guess is that there was a stimulus that, the brain registers it, but it was delayed. It wasn't what's most important, because of course he's doing things that your brain is like, I need to focus on this card trick that he's doing. So you're focused on that. But and it's really, even when you know the trick, you can be fooled by it. And I think it's really amazing thing. So yeah, just in us talking about
Oh, hold on, you're stalling.
how our brains work. No, oh, I'm getting a message. Your internet connection is unstable, but it's
Uh-oh.
gone. Am I back?
You are back, yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
So we know it's probably me. Um,
Well,
but
mine is icky too.
everyone's internet sucks. It
Yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
matter.
Yeah, it
Um,
goes like half in
but
and out.
yeah. But yeah, I think so. To go back to, I mean, this all started because we were talking about biting nails. But like, if
Nails?
you have a piece of clothing that's itchy, if there's like a tag or just the fabric, you'll notice it, and then you do other things. But then when you get bored, that's when you're going to notice it again. So I think that's like with biting my nails. If I'm either hyper focused on something else,
Oh, oh no.
or just lacking in focus, that
Oh, there.
hello.
That was perfect.
Um,
Okay. That was good. Okay.
yeah, thank you. My along. Um, but yeah, so I think I bite my nails when I'm either hyper focused on something else or when I'm bored. I have anxiety, I have nerves, I have stress. I somehow don't think the nail biting is linked to that, because I don't find that I bite them more when I'm more stressed. I just bite them when I'm bored. I have found the bad tasting stuff doesn't work for me. If I paint my nails a bright color, that helps, because I'll see a flash of color before I do anything. It doesn't solve it clearly, but
But it's a step.
that's helped. Yeah, it's a step.
Yeah.
So there's nail biting. There's the fact that I cannot be concise. uh, as you've all witnessed. I'm very bad at Twitter for that reason. I can't, I enjoy expressing myself with more words.
Hmm.
So I don't mind that I'm prone to tangenting, but it can be difficult when I have to be concise. It can be a difficult thing. So I wish I could switch it on and off. And then my third thing, I mean, I in terms of habits, I'm very tough on myself, which I think a lot of people are. But I have a lot of self-esteem issues, and those are things that I'm working on, and I'm improving. But that is certainly like the number one thing.
Can I ask you
Yeah.
can I ask you like in terms of that, like where does that stem from, you think, or if you feel comfortable sharing that?
Yeah. I mean, it's never going to be from one
Right, right,
thing.
right. But
And I do
there's
think I do think there's chemical stuff. I mean, I have depression, and I think that there's, you would ask me before this, when you wrote to people about this, to think of causes to believe in. And I think that the way that we talk about mental health and depression is something very personal to me. And I think that it's a major thing that we need to fix
mm,
in this country and worldwide. There's valuable information out there, and it's still so misunderstood. And I think that still the big thing is when people think of someone who is depressed, they think, oh, sadness. Sadness is the overarching thing. For me, my depression isn't even sadness. It's more just like a lack of emotion.
mm.
It's
Yeah, numbness, right?
a
Numbness.
numbness. You feel tired. Again, more than sad, you just feel tired. You feel deflated, and sadness is a part of that. You feel angry. But that's a part of it. There isn't. It's a very distinct feeling, and that's like, you can be very happy with depression. You can feel tremendous joy. it isn't a break in your depression. It is a part of it. You can then feel sadness separate to your depression. And I think too, people feel depressed, and that is a very valid thing, and it's something very important. It's something that needs to be discussed. You can feel depressed without having depression. And that's
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
and it's a difficult thing. I've struggled with figuring out and categorizing how my weight factors into this, because I think it's a twofold thing. I don't think that I have depression because I'm fatter. I do think that I'm fatter because I have depression. I think that those are two very commonly go hand in hand. My
Yeah,
depression
absolutely.
does also, at the worst points in my life, my depression very much feeds into my relationship with food and my relationship with exercise, and has hindered that. I think when we talk about body positivity, one of the most ludicrous discussions against the body positivity moment that I've ever heard, and it's a frequent one, is people saying like, well, we're worried that if we celebrate somebody's fatness, then we're saying that being unhealthy is okay. And what infuriates me is that there has never been a single fat person who is not told on a daily basis that their fatness is okay. On a daily basis, you are told that the way you look is unacceptable. You are never going to be under a delusion that this is not healthy. And by the way, there are again many misconceptions about this, and that there are a lot of things that being unhealthy is has no effect on your health in a lot of different regards. There are some things that, you're at a higher risk if you're overweight, but the number one most dangerous thing health-wise about being overweight is that you are far less likely to be taken seriously when you talk to a doctor. If you are overweight and you are experiencing a serious problem, the number one thing that a doctor will tell you is you need to lose weight. It doesn't matter if it is a tumor that is causing you discomfort. You're told your discomfort is because you are overweight, you need to lose weight. I have a cousin who is having severe problems with her pregnancy. She went in, she said, I'm having severe problems with the pregnancy. She was told, no, it's because you're overweight, you need to lose weight. She's told you need to lose weight while she's pregnant. Her mother is a nurse. Her mother went in with her, and they insisted on getting a scan. They were told, well, you'll have to pay for it. They said, that's okay. They noticed there was something severely wrong. My cousin went into operation. It is a frequent thing. And so the health risks, I'm not going to say that they're not there, but the number one thing is that doctors, that is statistically, that is the greatest danger to you, is not being taken seriously. I would also say there aren't a lot of studies done because it's seen as an open and shut issue. It is far more difficult to get information about how certain things affect fatter bodies. And there hasn't been much conclusive research done on the way that even obesity, affects fitness and health. I remember reading something that was saying there is literally no scientific link to obesity and lifespan, and the reason isn't that we can't collect that. That doesn't
interesting.
exist,
that's fascinating.
but it's that there hasn't been significant study done. People aren't interested in looking at the way at whether obesity truly contributes to things, because honestly it's just assumed that it does. And
wow,
and
that's
I think that
true.
I think we need to live life healthily, this country and the world, but I do think that American relationship to this is very distinct. we need to change our relationship to this. But the body positivity movement is about telling people who are overweight, who therefore have a higher link to being depressed, because that is true. Basically just telling them it is okay to exist as yourself. There is nothing in the body positivity movement that says you cannot lose weight if that's something you want to do, or even that you shouldn't lose weight. It is purely about validating identity. And people are very quick to be very uncomfortable with that. And it's a difficult thing to grapple with. It's a difficult thing. And so, yeah, so for me, I don't know if my weight is really linked to this. I do know that it has coincided that I was at my heaviest when I was at the worst mental place I've ever been. Although, interestingly enough, so, and I don't know if I've told you this, Kenny, because I really don't tell a lot of people. And it took me a couple of years to get to the point that I even was comfortable sharing this with anybody. But I've been suicidal. And the moment that I remember having those thoughts coincided with an external event that was really difficult in my life, involving landlords. And there was, I think I've told you that story. That was a terrible thing. At that time, I lost 30 pounds in less than a month. It was an immediate reaction. And it was because I wasn't taking care of myself. It's because I was not sleeping. I was not eating, which usually I will overeat when I'm stressed. This, I just stopped eating. It also was a point that I was moving into a 6th floor walk up. So I suddenly, there was a birth. I ended up losing 30 pounds. It was not healthy for me to lose 30 pounds. It was very bad. It was very, very bad. I looked sick. I would look at myself and I'd look ill. And it was that thing that I was heavy enough that I was still heavy, having lost this weight, but I somehow was both chubby and gaunt. And numerous people would compliment me on the weight loss. And they wouldn't even say you're looking really good. They would say, oh, you've lost weight. That's great. And never at a point that, I'd shared, oh, I've been trying to lose weight. It was just it's an assumption that if no matter what weight you are, even if you're skinny, there's an assumption that you're trying to lose weight. And people would compliment me on this. And I remember going oh, this is how easy it is to get an eating disorder, because you're so validated for that sort of thing. Needless to say, I put the weight back on and then some. And it isn't even that my habits changed that much. It's just that my body had a reaction, then it had an inverse reaction. So I think that, so they're certainly linked. They're certainly linked to that. I'm not sure the way that they're linked. I don't think one causes the other. But they're certainly linked. They're in tandem. But yeah, I think ultimately depression it's a chemical thing. All the bullshit out there about don't take pills, go for a walk. I walk everywhere. And so I think that in terms of being down on myself and very critical of myself, which is something I've worked on and I've gotten much better about, but it's still there. And I think it still will be there. I think that I could do better at managing it. I think I'm interested in, trying medication for that, because I think that would help. But that would do a lot. I think I'm now thinking about habits that I have. I'm very bad at sleeping. Especially now that if I have a day job, I can figure out a routine. But then as soon as I have 2 days off of work, I'll revert back to my normal sleep schedule, which would be like my ideal day would be waking up at 1:00 and going to bed at like 5 in the morning. So
Hey,
that's
everyone
just,
has their
yeah,
cycle, right?
and
Yeah.
it's where I operate. But it isn't good because, especially because I'll be trying to wake up earlier, or I'll need to wake up earlier, but then I'm still going to bed really, really late. And it's very bad. It's very bad. And it's and I know that that's linked. Like a lot of these things are linked in some way. I don't know enough about myself. I don't know enough about my own mental stuff to know how it's going to manifest itself, how it's going to come out. So like, yeah, if I go on antidepressants and stop biting my nails, I'd be like, oh my God, like that's amazing. I don't suspect that they're linked. They might be. But I do think I had that habit far before I think I had depression.
Man. Oh, Miles, dude,
Yeah.
just by you like talking about it, like it's brave, you know? It is.
Well,
It's
and
like just
it's
talking about it too is like, I mean, that's a
and I
step in
think,
itself.
like I said, it took me a long time to really find myself in a place that I could talk about it, but that was going to grad school.
Yeah, yeah,
Going to
absolutely.
grad school is really helpful for me in just figuring out who I was as a person.
Well,
It was
I
not,
remember when
yeah,
you came back from grad school, like, and this is something with me too,
yeah,
is your posture. It wasn't so much your
completely,
posture was so different from how I'd ever seen
yeah,
you.
yeah,
I think that is I think way more linked than weight is to or like for
completely,
me that says something more about your psychological state than your
yeah.
weight, really. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all about,
Oh, it's just crazy. It
yeah,
really is psychological and psychic energy too, and like an acceptance and
and
like an honesty with oneself.
we're approaching this as actors. It's work that
Artists, really
requires you to be,
artists.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's work that requires you to be very in touch with your emotions. Um, People who aren't actors have these misconceptions about what it really is, and I think that like I hate it when people are like when there are things based off of real people and you see a performance that is an impression, because an impression is not a performance. You can get a voice down, you can be a great mimic all you want. That's not going to be what really,
But
that's not what acting is.
what about Eddie Redmayne in The Theory of Everything? He won an Oscar.
He did win an Oscar.
I loved his acting in that. I
But
did love his acting.
you know what, I'm gonna
That
go
was
into
pretty
this
good.
because one of my favorite movies to watch, and it's so bad,
The
is Jupiter
Danish
Ascending.
Girl. Oh, Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah. And you know what? With Eddie Redmayne,
An
I'm not
elephant.
gonna, his to be fair, his performance in Theory of Everything is better than his performance in Jupiter Ascending. His performance in Jupiter Ascending is one of the worst things I've ever seen. However, it is highly watchable. And he is, for better or for worse, he is making choices. He is connected. He is connected to that. And you know what? Ultimately, I feel like I understood this bizarre, totally nonsensical character that he created. I don't understand his vocal patterns. I don't understand
Yeah.
the sudden switches in volume, but I understand the character, and I do personally ultimately get more out of that performance from him than, for example, The Theory of Everything.
Oh, I
Um,
remember going to see that movie with you and Lucas, right? That was
oh,
so
it's
we sat in the back and there
life
was
changing.
there was that stupid shot of that elephant that was like, oh, and they used it twice, right? They used it twice, the exact same shot. Unbelievable.
I
Like
I remember the third time I watched that movie.
stop.
Because I've seen it like 8 times now. The third time I watched that movie, there's a bit where there's a captain, and she's awesome. There's like this captain. She's like, "It is my honor to serve you, Jupiter." And Mila Kunis goes, "Oh, call me Jupe."
A Jew?
She says, "Call me Jupe."
Oh,
No
Jew.
one, no one in this movie has called her Jupe. Actually, her cousin does once, but it's not like a thing. Like most people call her Jupiter. She has not asked anyone else. She's met multiple people. She has not said to a single one of them, "Call me Jupe." There's nothing about her like preferring to be called Jupe or even not liking to be called Jupiter. It was a line. It is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. I have no recollection of that line from the previous two times I saw that.
Well, that just shows like talking
Um,
about how much information our minds take in. Like there's so
yeah,
much crap in that film.
yeah. Oh, I mean the best moment. I mean, it's so tough because Eddie Redmayne really needs to be appreciated in that film because what? But there's the scene that is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. I I think about it constantly. Is the scene? So if you
Oh.
haven't seen the movie, Mila Kunis is a clone of the Queen of Space, and Channing Tatum is a splice. So he's like part wolf, but he's just like Channing Tatum with blonde hair and like pointy ears, and he can fly. But but they've been through this thing, and then he like brings her to her room. He's like, "Anything else?" And she's like, "Oh, maybe you could, if you wanted to stay." There's been no hint of romantic attraction before this. But she's like, "Oh, if you want to stay." And he says, "You don't understand, but like I have more in common with a dog than with a human." And Mila Kunis says, "I love dogs. I've always loved dogs." And Channing Tatum just goes and leaves. And the camera stays on Mila Kunis alone in a room. And she goes, "I love dogs." Perfection. Perfection. It's so, and this is what I say about consume all media.
Yes.
There's no
Yeah,
reason.
exactly.
There's no
Hey.
reason that I should have ever watched this. No one should have ever watched Jupiter Ascending. And yet, I believe, and I know I'm not alone in this, but I think that having seen that movie brought tremendous value to my life.
I've watched Tim and Eric's $1 billion movie 4 times now. 4 times.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, truly, I think I'm much dumber than I was 10 years ago for that reason alone.
But
Okay,
like,
so
but
I
wait,
have
no.
I have one more. Say
Okay.
what you're gonna
No,
say.
I want to push back on that because
What?
the
Oh, Tim.
saying that we're much dumber than this, but I do think like, and I don't think that movie is like their best work that they've done, but there's a craft to it, and there's a function to it and a purpose to it. And I know this isn't what you're saying, but I think that we need to allow for the stupid things because they frankly are invaluable to us as people. A sense of silliness is a really important thing, and
Mm, mm.
and I think that it's the stupid things that can bring us together. Somebody that I can have a great conversation with, but that I can't joke with, is somebody I'm less likely to seek out further interaction.
Mm.
If I can laugh with somebody, laughter and food are gonna
Yeah.
bond me more than, and I mean we talk about big picture things. We talk about politics constantly.
I know
We talk
we have
about
not touched that once this whole
I
we have not
know,
touched
I know.
that, and we have barely touched film really. We
Yeah, yeah.
two,
Well,
2 hours.
I'm telling you I'm suicidal, which I've told less than a dozen people. So, we're doing
Well,
other things, Kenny.
yeah,
We
yeah.
talked about cheese.
We're doing less important things, but
Yeah.
yeah, no,
I mean,
no.
look, we opened with cheese. It was difficult to go up from there. But but it's these
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it
we
is.
have these, you can have amazing conversations, but I also think that you can't get to those big conversations if you're not able to have silly things.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the word, yeah, because I use stupid a lot too, because I saw that you kind of like rephrasing it from stupid,
yeah,
the word stupid,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I think stupid it doesn't mean like it's just, I guess I use it as silly, like
Yeah,
stupid as just kind of like absurd or
yeah.
like ridiculous, or
Well,
you know what I mean?
but I
It's
think
just such a good
culturally,
word.
oh, it is.
Yeah,
But
stupid.
culturally, we do place devalue on anything that we don't perceive as contributing. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
and
That's true.
that's I think a major thing. I'm looking at
Yeah.
there's been a lot of discussion, I think, about the arts right now because people look at celebrity culture, and I've seen all these think pieces of like how celebrity culture is dying because something like coronavirus really put into perspective how just not useful celebrity culture is. But you know what? I think it's going to come back with a vengeance because I think we need distractions in order to function.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
it's why
mm.
when you're in the midst of things and you're being really productive, you're going to burn out if you can't do something to distract yourself.
That's really
Um,
interesting. Oh, I wish we had. I really. Oh my
well,
gosh, there's
yeah,
so much good stuff here. Yeah.
there's such a thing of like, and this isn't. I'm not the first person to say this by any means, but what are things that people turn to in the when so many people were indoors? The arts. So many people were watching Netflix. So many people were watching, were getting new subscription services to things. If we didn't have writers, if we didn't have actors, if we didn't have these things, if we didn't have musicians, we would have lost our minds well before the coronavirus. So I think that there is a place. Culture, civilizations have always had some form of the arts because it's necessary, because it's valuable and it's important. And the arts is going to involve entertainment. You need to have silliness. If Shakespeare was beautiful language and tackling of universal themes, he'd be known as a really good poet. He wouldn't be performed as much. The fact that his plays are genuinely entertaining is why they've endured. Ultimately, why they've endured. If he was just a great poet, we would read his stuff and we would say, this is a
He'd
beautiful
be
turn
like
of phrase.
Robert Browning,
Yeah,
who, yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Who's that? Right.
Shakespeare, yeah, Shakespeare is a poet, Shakespeare is a philosopher. He's remembered as a playwright because his plays are entertaining. It infuriates me to no end when a production of Macbeth cuts out the porter.
Yeah. Who does that?
It's done a lot because for time and because ultimately the porter doesn't contribute to the plot.
To the plot. Yeah. Okay.
Um,
But
and so and I know,
it's a
and I mean
moment of breath, right? Yeah. Yeah. We're on the
there was
same.
a Macbeth, the movie with Michael Fassbender, which
Which
is
you
one of the
loved,
worst things
right?
I've seen. I
That and
really hate it.
Cymbeline.
But I think a huge thing about it is that they cut the porter, and that the production values of this movie. One, it's slow. That is the shortest play, and it's a really long movie. But they cut the porter because that movie is all vibe, and that vibe is intense. And to be fair, the play is very heavy, and Shakespeare put the porter in intentionally because it's this one monologue that is comedic, and right it is right at the point where things really go to shit. Macbeth is killing the king, and then we just have this monologue from a goofy drunk guy. And it's so invaluable because after that moment, the play doesn't stop. After that moment, Macbeth descends into madness and he is haunted and he is tormented. And you need that break and that levity. And one of the porter's the porter says in his speech, remember the porter,
Mm,
because
yeah.
because there is importance to him. Parasite.
Nice. Yeah.
Parasite is so brilliant, and I think one of the best things is the best scene in that movie is the scene where the rich family is off on the trip, and the Kim family is sitting there, and they're watching the rain and they're drinking whiskey. And it is a moment of quiet. That scene goes on a long, long time. They are talking, and like you can tell they're getting drunker, and there's like frustration. The tension that builds in that scene is unbelievable, but it is a moment of quiet. That quiet is broken by the doorbell ringing, and it's the old housekeeper who comes back. And I don't want to spoil anything in case somebody watching has not seen Parasite, but then the movie happens, and it doesn't stop. It is the last moment of peace that any of these central characters feel. It is the last moment of anything. If the whole movie was that, we would not get a sense of the disruption in their lives. Having this long moment, and Bong Joon-ho is brilliant, and he lets it linger, and then he lets it be disrupted. That isn't a particularly funny scene. It's not a moment of levity, but it's a moment of calm. And like there's a brilliant montage when the rich family is coming back, and there's long takes in that, which also builds suspense. There's other things that are masterfully done, but I think that is the most crucial thing in that movie. And it's because when we have stillness, when we have moments where we're allowed to not be engaged, it's what allows us to then be engaged.
It allows us to breathe. It allows us to breathe with where we are, instead of like, breath is like taking breath is the way to listen.
Yeah.
Breathing is the way to be here now, and to accept what's happening, and it's, and like the best film, like actually my roommate and I just watched, it was my third time watching Snowpiercer. I think we watched it did we watch it at the Angelica the first time?
Yeah, we saw it in theaters.
Yeah, we saw it the first time together.
We were one of the people that saw it.
Man, yeah. And there's this moment, there are several moments in that film where, it's just like tense, boom, they take the train car, and then it's like, okay, they're like,
well, and that's Bong Joon-ho's signature.
Him and also that movie Blind Spotting. Him also, and also the movie Blind Spotting. Which I love, by David Diggs, which I think is actually one of the best films about race relations in the last 20 years. I've seen articles that say like the best films by Black film writers and directors, and it's never on the list. It's never on the list, so which is a shame. But I wanted to ask you one last question.
Yes.
We're going at 2 hours 11 minutes right now.
I know.
It's amazing.
But we know
and this is nothing too. This is like this is actually like
you say this, and then in an hour we'll have realized that you said that an hour ago.
Yeah. Well, but exactly. So okay. So last question. Then I want to hear about your cause that maybe I can put onto the comment section. Or the description. I guess two-part question again. 10 years ago, how do you feel like you've changed from 10 years ago? And 10 years from now, how do you think you will be different from how you are now?
I was in college.
What does that mean? What does that mean, Miles?
I didn't know the things I didn't know.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I have a greater understanding of the world and of my place in it. I've always been political. I remember being fascinated in elementary school when the Clinton Gore election was happening. And it was a fascinating thing to me, just this idea of voting. I was very fascinated with that. And yeah, I mean, I throughout my life as a kid, I was one of those kids that was like, the voting age needs to be lowered. I'm ready to vote. And I think a lot of that came from a sense of my world was very small, as anyone's is. When you've only been here a certain amount of time and you've only had a certain number of experiences, things feel small. And because things felt small, I really felt like I could change them. And my and also, like, in this country specifically, we're told you can change the world. And so those were my ideas. That was what I was thinking. And so the ideas of I can do something, and if I engage in something, then it's going to change things. And things like the first election I could vote in was Obama, McCain, and I had just moved to Ohio for college and got to vote in a swing state in that election. And I remember watching the results coming in and realizing he'd won. And I mean, everybody was celebrating at Kenyon. And then I remember a pundit was saying that the single most influential demographic was the youth vote in Ohio, because Ohio was sort of what clinched it. And that was a huge turnout and a huge thing. And we all went like, yeah. And that was very exciting. And so I wasn't, 10 years ago, I wasn't at the point that I thought, oh, I can change the world alone. But I think that I still sort of probably thought that I could impact the world. What I realize now is that I can impact things to make the world a better place. A person cannot change the world. People working together, maybe, but what we can do is we can do things to influence each other. And that, it can lead to something bigger, but it doesn't have to. So yeah, I think that a big change for me is awareness of the influence that I can have and the positivity of it. The idea of being able to that the actions that I take will impact other people, but it's going to be on a different scale than I think I had contextualized it 10 years ago. And I think ultimately that defines how we live our lives, is how we think we're going to change things. That is the defining thing in what we do. And so I think that's why that's what is first coming to mind with that question.
That's great. Oh, that's so smart, Miles.
Thank you. I think too, I have a better sense of myself. By 2010, June 23rd, 2010, I definitely was having mental health issues that I wasn't aware of. I didn't understand why I felt certain ways. I think it's a common thing, is that people believe that everybody must be feeling certain things. So I have a better awareness of myself. I think I now have a better perception of how others perceive me. I no longer assume I'm an annoyance to other people, and I think that that's partly because multiple people have been like, fuck you, you're like great.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. I think I have a better set of expectations for myself. I think if I had in 2010 been told where I was at in my career, for example, I would have been disappointed. Whereas now I'm quite content with where I am, partly because it's where I am, you know.
Yeah, there's so much truth
And
there. Wow.
and you, I think I'm better at not comparing myself to others. Um, yeah, yeah. I think too. I'm far more aware now of the advantages I do have in life and the privileges that I have, and I'm working on using that privilege for good. So yeah, those are some general ideas of how I think I've evolved. It's tough to remember 2010, and it's tough to remember the person
Right.
I was back then. I've had this talk because the movie Dogville, I used to have a really hard time watching it. And watching myself specifically, to the point that like when watching it with friends, I'd be like, I'm probably gonna dip out when it's my time to watch it. And then I've been better at it recently when I've watched, because I'm like, I'm no longer recognize myself as that kid. I know it was me, but I'm so far removed, and I do feel that. I feel that the person I was in college was a very different person than who I am now. So it's difficult for me to really gauge the mindset and the person I was. But those are I feel comfortable with that answer.
Yeah.
Looking
Yeah.
forward, I don't know. It's difficult because who the hell knows? I'd like to think that I'd still be pursuing this career. I really do think acting is what I'm supposed to be doing. I think it's what I want to be doing. I know telling stories in some capacity is going to be a part of whatever I do. So I feel comfortable saying that'll still be a part of my life. I still see myself being in New York. I think that if I'm somewhere else, it's because there's a reason that I moved for like work or something. But
Yeah,
I see
zombie
myself.
apocalypse starts in New York
Yeah,
City.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But but honestly, I mean, I know this isn't a zombie apocalypse, but I know a lot of people have been fleeing the city from the start of the virus. And for me, I was like, I cannot imagine being anywhere else. I am so glad I'm here, partly because I really want to see the city when it does open up, because it's going to be a beautiful fucking place. I mean, like with 9/11, this community came together, the city came together and thrived in a way it hadn't before out of necessity. And I think that I know the same thing is going to happen now. I want to be here for that. I want a place I can walk to a grocery store, you know. That's an important thing for me. I've not only not considered getting out of here if I had a place to go. If I had that option, I wouldn't have wanted to take it. So I do think even in an almost apocalyptic situation, I stuck to my guns and stayed here. And so I see myself still being here. I think the reason it's a tough question is that I've frequently found that the things that impact us the most are the things that we're too ignorant to know that they're going to be a factor. I forget the specific thing, we talked about it in grad school, but it's like the levels of mastery or the levels of understanding, where it starts with unconsciousness,
Right.
where you don't know how much you don't know. Like you don't know anything, and you don't know what there is to know. And then you learn, oh, I don't know anything, but I recognize there are things I don't know. And then you get to the point where you think you know everything, but there's a lot you don't know. And then the final point isn't just, oh, I know everything, but it's understanding the things that you're not going to know. I think it's a really important way to look at stuff, because any experience I go into, I will set expectations and I'll say, I know when I go into this, blah, blah, blah is going to happen. sometimes it does, but the thing, it's, there are going to be things that you never even consider that are going to be a bigger part of that. That's something I like to ask people. I had a holiday gig that I don't want to go too into it, but we'll say I was a personal friend of Santa Claus's during this. I worked very closely with him over the season, and I asked him in preparation for my work. I asked, when people said, "Do you have any questions?" I said, "What is something about this job that you wouldn't have known to ask about when you started? What's an aspect that just really took you by surprise?" It ended up, the anecdotes that I got were really important and really powerful and really helpful. And so it's difficult for me projecting the future, because I've most recently, certainly since grad school, which I graduated 3 years ago, since then I try to approach things without setting too many expectations, because I know that my expectations are going to be wrong. And I know that I don't know enough to know what I should be expecting. And so our industry is changing so much. The world is changing so much. You know, if I were to hope and say I would love to be on a Broadway stage in 10 years, we might get to 10 years and Broadway is not a thing anymore. Like, you know, who knows? Things are truly changing all the time. And I think that I'll be wiser than I am now. I think I'll understand more than I do now, because I think that there's no way for that not to be true. Even if I take steps back, I will have 10 years more of experience. There just is going to be more understanding. I don't think I have the equipment or the capacity to understand how the ways in which I'll evolve. So yeah, so I feel like I'm kind of copping out of the answer, but I also hope that just in terms of volume of words spoken, I've addressed it enough.
Stop that. Stop. No, what it sounds like is you're talking to yourself in 10 years, you know, is
Yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah.
and yeah. And, yeah, it's just, well, I think the thing that comes to my mind is that, you know, the stories, the anecdotes that you received from being Santa's helper,
Yes.
was very important. But
Yeah.
you know, that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this in the first place, is because, you know, your story is important, and
Yeah.
you know, and I want you to know that, and I want everyone to know that, and you'll have this now. This will be on the internet. Can you believe that? It's going to be on the internet forever, you know,
Yeah.
until I die at least. So hopefully
Yeah.
that won't be. For some reason, I went running yet the other day, and I was like, there was this like number 70 that was just like lit up on one of the houses, and I was like, that's going to be how old I am when I'm going to die, which is weird. It's a morbid thought, but like,
Wow.
I don't know. I have those. I just have these. I don't know. It
So
just seems about the
when you're
right age.
69, you'll get the Riddler costume tailored.
Yes, yes, Miles. Yes, I wonder how many people know about that. I don't think many people
Well,
know
I
that.
mean, look, Kenny, you said you know, this is a recording, so you can make your wishes known. Kenny wants to be buried in the Riddler costume from Batman.
I would like to be laid out open casket, with my top half at least being the Riddler from
Yeah.
Batman. The bottom half is reserved for things that I'm still interested in incorporating for my life. You know, so Riddler on the top and
Yeah.
a question mark on the bottom.
Hey, that's still part of the Riddler's costume. I just before we go, I just want to. short story collection that I read right at the start of this quarantine called Exhalation by Ted Chiang, Chiang. He wrote the short story that was adapted into the film Arrival.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's called like A Brief History of You.
What is
Um,
the name of the author again?
Ted Chiang, Chiang. And
Okay.
the book was called Exhalation.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna put that in the description.
the first story is about, it's told as if it's like an Arabian Nights style fairy tale about a man who has these time traveling
Escapades.
that will send you directly 10 years in the past or future. And he tells this time traveler this traveler who approaches, he tells him the stories of people who have used them before. And then using that information that he has learned from hearing about the other people, he makes a decision in how he's going to travel in time. Yeah, I don't want to say too much more, but I think I imagine this is a question you're asking a lot of people, and I think you'd find that story and the whole collection really interesting.
What's interesting is I have not asked that question to anyone yet.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So I mean, these are all like coming from the things that you're saying. It's making me want to ask you those questions. But yeah, also want to shout out the show Devs by Alex Garland on
Yeah,
Hulu.
yeah,
Unbelievable. That
it's
what
really
you were
great.
just saying made me think about that and how
The thing
I
about
am a
devs,
yeah.
the thing about it's the fact that that show stuck the landing was amazing. It's such high concept sci-fi, and really poses big things and like asks so many questions that you're
Mm.
never going to answer them. And I really liked the show. I
Alex
also,
Garland can do no wrong. Oh, you're going to say I
yeah,
also
no, I mean, yeah, I just was like, I think I trust Alex Garland, and I really liked
yeah.
the show. And I didn't think I was going to hate the show, but I did think, I don't know how there's going to be an ending that'll feel satisfying, and it really did. Yeah, it's a great show, and it got no like very little attention, and I'm so sad about it. It's so good,
You
but
know,
that's the Alex Garland thing. He's gonna get something.
he's going
He's
to get
gonna
something great.
really capture everyone, and it's just the timing will be right.
It would be interesting to see how he would have handled Westworld, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
I think he'll end up getting something for HBO or something. Even though I guess FX is working well for him, you know, so maybe he'll do another thing. Also, I'm watching Party Down,
Oh
which
yeah.
finally, because before I did not have Hulu and you know this clown show pilot that I wrote like
Did I recommend it to you because you were
yeah, you
writing the
did.
clown show
Absolutely.
pilot? Yeah.
Yeah. You recommended that to me like years ago, like more than
Yeah.
5 years ago, I think. And finally now it's available to me very easily and conveniently. So
Yeah.
it is so good. It is so funny.
It's really good.
Um,
And
but
really it's shockingly relatable.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's brilliant. It really, I mean, you can tell that it's written by a bunch of white guys. But it still is like it doesn't detract from it. I mean, there
Yeah.
is one racial moment where today, I mean, this was 10 years ago actually. Like
Yeah.
today, it would be handled very different. Like there would be a lot more reaction to it. But
Yeah.
I think it's, you know, I think it skirts the line of insensitivity, which is exactly what good comedy does. You know,
Yeah.
okay, and Miles, do you have a cause that you want to talk about, or?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think I touched on it before, and that I think mental illness and depression, the way we talk about it is really important, and it needs to change. There are so many causes out there that I care about, and especially now, it's difficult. And I weighed. I mean, it's Black Lives Matter, one as a statement, but also as a cause, is so vital. And it's exciting because it does feel like there might be some formative change.
Finally, I
We'll
mean,
see.
just now, yeah.
Yeah, and there's, for a number of reasons, there's finally and it's been building to this, of course, but there's finally attention being paid to that. So like, these are things that are important. I feel like I care very deeply about trans rights. I think too that is something that is getting attention paid to it. So there are causes that I care very much about, and I considered them. The reason I think I settled on mental illness and depression is it's one that I can speak to very personally. In many ways, I have an awareness that I I I will continue to devote energy and speak about certain causes, but they're not my cause. They're not the cause that I should be a spokesperson for. Doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about them, especially, we're two white guys talking about these things. There's important discussions to be had here. But yeah, if I had to choose a single cause, I think that mental illness and depression and the way it's discussed in society really needs to change. And that is something I think I can speak to. It was very difficult for me to recognize my own depression when I first had thoughts of this, and I wondered, I'm like, maybe this is depression. Like maybe there's a reason I'm feeling this. And I mentioned it to my doctor, my family doctor. And he just was like, no, you're not, you can't be depressed. You're too happy.
Oh, I remember you telling me that
And
story.
and I
It's
genuinely was just like,
ridiculous.
oh, okay. And I do think it feels like now that isn't a mentality people have, but of course it's some people do, because not
Right,
everybody is
that's true.
evolving.
Yeah.
This was 11 years ago maybe that happened. A turning point for me was reading about Robin Williams and some of his thoughts, because he is a figure who, with a certain set of understanding, you would not have equated with depression. I think now, once you really know more about it, you go, oh my God, of course he was depressed. But recognizing that in him helped me recognize it in myself and accept it in myself. Wayne Brady wrote a powerful piece about this a couple years ago, and about his own struggles with that. And because I think, I'm known as a happy guy, and you said this at the beginning, is like, oh, I'm a goofy guy. I people frequently will be like, will tell me I'm funny. And I enjoy that. I enjoy having that, but also it then becomes difficult because I don't want to. It makes me feel like I'll disappoint people
If you're not, yeah, totally.
if I am feeling things that don't jive with that. And I know a lot of people feel that way. A lot of depression manifests itself this way. And that's the thing. A lot of people, it doesn't. Depression can manifest itself in certain ways. And when we think of depressed, there was that truly atrocious movie, Life Itself, that came out that was so bad. And part of it was that Oscar Isaac's character, it was just like every moment was like, how depressed can we make him? He's like unshaven, putting alcohol in his coffee and wandering around the streets of New York just being like, why? And the thing is, I don't want to deny any experiences, because there are people who have depression who are going to act in this way. That is a real thing. But I think that the depictions of depression in that way are not based off of real life experiences. They're based off of a separate idea of what this looks like. So, if I had not seen people sharing their experiences with this and recognizing traits of myself in those people, I would have still believed, oh, my doctor told me there's no way that I have this, and because I'm happy, there's no way that I could, and I would not be able to work on myself from an informed place. And the fact that I felt suicidal, if I hadn't had that understanding, who knows what would have happened. So I think it's important. As Americans, I think we have a very specific relationship with gun violence. I think gun violence is intrinsically linked with mental illness. Whenever somebody shoots people, whenever there's a mass shooting, the assumption is that this is a person with mental illness. They're frequently not. Some of them are diagnosed after the fact, but usually the reason they're diagnosed is with a perspective that we have where we go, these are people who did something terrible. It has to be because something was wrong with them. And the truth is that the reason is because they're hateful people. And
well said.
Yeah, and so like somebody like Dylan Roof, I can't analyze him. I'm not equipped to that. But I look at a case like Dylan Roof, and to me, my response is not he was sick. My response was he is a hateful person. And if he does have a mental illness, the reason he did the terrible thing he did was not because he was mentally ill, it was because he was hateful. And there are so many statistics out there. People with mental illness are far more likely to be victims of violence than perpetrators of it. If people with mental illness are violent, it is always because violence has been enacted upon them. So mental illness is not the single like unifying trait of that. It is with shocking regularity, it is because they are from abusive households. And I think that's a big thing, is that we, whenever issues of gun violence come up, there's discussion of mental illness and mental health. And so people against gun control will say, well, we need to have mental health. That's where we need to improve this. But people who are for gun control will also say, but also, mental health is part of that. And it really fucking isn't. Most mass shooters.
Well, I got a quick question. Yeah. Do you think that being hateful is also having a mental illness?
No. When I say mental illness, I'm talking about something diagnosable.
Something like chemical.
Something that's chemical.
I see.
And and so we can talk about hate as the real virus. Yeah. It's an insidious thing. It's a treatable thing.
Yeah. But you're talking about it in terms of more biological chemical.
Yeah. I don't remember the statistic, and I could find it, but I want to just say, I think the number itself isn't important. But I'm writing a play about gun violence, and when I went to the big march against guns, and my sign was about mental illness. And I think a big thing that I learned is I think it was as high as like 81% of mass shooters had not previously been diagnosed with anything. So even if we were to say, if you've been diagnosed with a mental illness, you can't carry a gun, there's going to be plenty of mass shooters out there. Little thing like, the fact that other countries have an equal number of people with mental illness and significantly less gun violence. So I know that the way we view mental illness and the way we discuss it is harmful to the people who have it, in that they can't reach understanding, but two, there's a fear that we sense. And so much of that is media. Something like Joker pissed me off for many reasons, but so much of it was that Arthur just is vaguely crazy. And there was such little specificity as to what he actually had. It was very clear we're portraying him as a mentally unstable man, but they're not going into it. This isn't a realistic thing. And I think that, you know, even if the idea is like, well, people were mean to him and that's what led him to this, it's another in a long line of movie villains with mental illness. We look at something like Split. I think that people with schizophrenia will constantly avoid telling people about their schizophrenia because it is incredibly understood in the world at large. In that, I mean, it's not like, it's a completely separate thing from having multiple personalities. We genuinely don't equate.
Have you seen Take Shelter? Have you seen Take Shelter?
Yes. Yeah.
What are your thoughts of that? Do you remember?
To be honest, I mean, I don't really remember it enough to talk about that one. But I think mental illness is one of the many things that is not written well in film and TV. And like with the many things that are not written well, it can actually be dangerous. In those discussions, I also, just in terms of guns and mental illness, specifically with depression, a fascinating statistic to me is that suicide rates, the United States has an eerily high number of attempted suicides being successful. So like our suicide rate is fairly high for developed countries. I hate that term. I know what you're saying.
I know what I mean.
But it is very high, but it isn't the highest. What we are really at the top of the charts are people attempting suicide actually carrying it off. And the single reason for that is guns. If you try to kill yourself, it's very difficult to do because your body is going to fight against it. A lot of people express doing something like jumping or taking pills and then immediately going, oh, this was a mistake. I don't want to do this. And there are things, if you cut yourself, if you take pills, you can seek medical attention. If you jump from a distance, most of the time people jump into water. It isn't always successful. Hanging oneself is really difficult. And then there are things that just take a long time. Asphyxiation in a car, you have plenty of time to decide not to do it. So for various reasons, there are reasons that people choose not to. If you shoot yourself, you are far more likely to succeed. And again, I don't remember the statistics, but it's something like 15% of most suicide attempts do not work.
Wow,
when you factor it, or sorry, 15% actually work. When you factor in guns, it's something like 75% that work. So again, those are two issues that gun violence is something that I also care about very distinctly. And I think that in the lens of mental health and the way that we equate those two, they are linked, but they're linked for the wrong reasons. And yeah, so that's something that I think everyone can learn more about. I can certainly research more about. So
is there a resource is there a resource or like a website or something that you
I mean, there are a lot. I'd say definitely in terms of the gun stuff, go to Everytown. Everytown is really good at just like the practical ways to approach this.
Everytown.com it's called?
I think it's just everytown.com, but they have a lot of resources, including some of the statistics that I mentioned. And then they also have a huge like links to articles that you can find. They're one of my favorite things to have followed.
That's so that's gun safety is what that is? Yeah,
Everytown. I don't know if it was before or if it just came to light, but I think it was through Sandy Hook that is at least how I became aware of them. And they're a very good organization for gun violence. In terms of how mental illness is portrayed. I think similarly that, like, you know, when we watch depictions of anything, being aware of what we're watching. I think there's been a big push in the way that trans characters have been written, in that when we watch cis men play trans women, this is not coming from an authentic place. It purports really dangerous stereotypes. It's a dangerous thing. And I think now that there needs to be an awareness, if you're watching something, that this is not this is problematic in its existence as a portrayal. I think similarly, there are so many films out there that have mental illness portrayed in a negative light. And frequently it's like, oh, this character does bad things, but is sympathetic because he has something there. I think let's all check ourselves when we watch something like that. You know, when we watch the movie Split with M. Night Shyamalan, I kind of refuse to watch. I'm not going to watch it. I believe James McAvoy's good. I think people are allowed to like that movie. They're allowed to like his performance. Understand that this is not a real thing, and that even as a fictionalized depiction of something, that character is going to increase violence against people who are schizophrenic. It's going to increase isolation for them. It's going to increase this idea that people who are schizophrenic are monsters. Even if they don't say the word schizophrenic, schizophrenia for whatever reason has become like the go-to thing. So be aware of that in media. Once you know to look for it, you see it constantly. I mean, constantly. Even just on SNL, how many times is it like, oh, this person's dangerous because they're crazy? And like, I love the cast member they have, Chris Redd. Chris Redd does great crazy eyes. He does like a really good, like, yeah. And I'm thinking of him because I just saw the movie Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping for the first time. He's in it. And he plays this like, oh, but like his whole thing is like, he's insane. Is he actually insane? This character, I know there are some people who don't like for people to use the word crazy. I'm not too concerned about that. I use the word crazy all the time. I think it's probably not the best thing, but I also, I do think that there's, I don't know. I think it's a more complicated thing than other slurs that are out there personally. But I think that when we have this idea of like, oh, that person is crazy because they're dangerous, let's keep in mind that for a lot of people, if you have mental illness, you will be viewed as crazy. And usually you are then viewed as dangerous, when most of the time that is not the case. There was a great episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where because in previous episodes they talked about this guy and they were like, oh, he was insane. And like they're at their school reunion and it's mentioned, oh no, he murdered his parents. And like, he's actually insane. And then he comes back and he's a really nice, sad guy. And they're all apprehensive around him. And he ends, he's like, I didn't kill them. That was a rumor you started. And I went, and he's like, and they said, yeah, but you spent time in that insane asylum. He's like, well, I was depressed because my parents were murdered. And that show does a really good job of subverting things and taking certain tropes. They don't always do well. I mean,
hit or miss.
I wouldn't be surprised if the reason they had that storyline is because maybe somebody pointed out, you know, this character that you've mentioned is maybe not really a great thing, and so they wanted to subvert it. I know they had a character on the early seasons who would show up at least once a season, who was a trans woman. And I remember reading, there was a great blog called Your Moment of Transphobia. And it would examine transphobia in pieces of media. And somebody asked about It's Always Sunny, and the person writing the blog said, this is a really tough one for me. There are some just automatic flaws. For one thing, the character was just referred to by everyone as the T slur.
Uh-huh.
Right there, not good.
Right.
And however, the character Carmen, she was one of the only sane people on the show. The jokes were never at her expense. They were always at the expense of like, wow, these guys are ignorant. Like the main character, with everything on the show, the joke is almost always at the expense of the main characters. We even have like somebody punches Carmen, and these two guys are like, hey, that's a hate crime. And they like come in and bust it up. And I think also like they had a cis woman playing the role, which not great, but better than what was the norm at the time. Normally that character would have been played. It was the default. That character has not been on for many seasons. I think they just sort of went, we're not serving this. It's a good thing to not have it. Because, they've made mistakes. Any show that's been on the air for like 13 years or something is going to have made mistakes. But they seem to have some awareness of trying not to repeat them. So yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if that is why they bring in this character and have that arc. But I think like once you are looking for it, you see it everywhere. So I would ask people to be aware of that. I would also ask, read stories. There are so many people who talk about this. Wayne Brady. If you Google Wayne Brady and depression, it was a very formative thing for me to read. It was a different example of seeing depression mentioned. Because I think it's a difficult thing for people to talk about, but the resources are out there. So yeah, I don't have like an article that I'm looking at, and I think too, there are charities out there for mental illness, but I don't know of one that's focused on changing the perception of it. But I think that the work can be there, and like with any prejudice, any preconceived notions, it's just going to start within the person.
Yes. That's the whole difficulty with the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Is like, it's important. Like the ultimate goal is to change the hearts of people.
Yeah.
And like that can't be legislated, and
Well,
it can't be protested out of people. But there are steps. There are steps, and of course, legislation helps to shift culture, but I think I think that listening and communicating about this in the way that you are is the way to do it.
With Black Lives Matter, I'm also thinking, because you said something in your like introductory video that reminded me of this, made me think about this, where you said, this is very important work, it is necessary, it is overdue, it's not enough. It can't be the only thing. I think we're in a difficult position in that our country was founded on racism. I mean, our country was distinctly founded in part by slavery. Slavery is how we had any economic success.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, we are a country that exists directly on the back of slavery. Obviously, we exist directly at the expense of indigenous American people who we committed genocide against and drove out, and still have not even come close to addressing that. I mean, even when we discuss, racism, and Native Americans get left out of that conversation.
They're put on the back burner, right?
And it really, it's scary. And there are many problems just with the formation of America. And I mean, I'm someone who's always said, I don't love our country, but I love the idea of America. I love and I think I've even said things to the extent of like, we were built on a principle. we were of achieving freedom. And I think that that's a beautiful thing to strive for. I don't say that anymore because we were not built on that freedom for everyone. We were built on that freedom for a specific set.
Yeah, read The
I mean,
People's History of America by Howard Zinn, and that's true.
yeah, yeah,
He will confirm that.
yeah. And I think that it's difficult because when something is so formative, when you have the roots of corruption, it's very difficult to eradicate it.
And separate them, right? Yeah,
and
yeah.
the thing is,
It's a
like,
holistic
things like,
approach, right?
yeah, reparations are a start. Um,
Yeah, and defining what reparations means
yes,
too.
acknowledgement of basic rights are a start, but there's never going to be a time, no matter how much we progress, there's never going to be a time that America was not racist in its formulation. And it's not just America. The theater industry, the film industry, which I love dearly and which I think have the power for tremendous change, have a grand history of exclusion and racism. And so it's going to be, there needs to be a concerted effort to the point where it will feel excessive if there's going to be any actual progress made, because change tends to be slow. And even the most formulative, substantive, tangible things are going to feel are ultimately band-aids. We're course correcting. And I mean, I've talked about a few times just in this conversation about how grad school was so valuable for me because the whole experience felt like a reset button for me. America as a concept is too big for there to be a reset button, but that is ultimately what we need, because if we are fixing things going back, we need to get under the roots. We need to really find the seeds of this, or they're always going to be there. I think I was one of many people who thought we were done with Nazis. We're not. That has become startlingly clear. It became startlingly clear in 2016. We can fix things, think that problems are gone.
Yeah, and
it's in the bedrock.
I think that the deeper, it's not just Nazism, right? It's what you're talking about. It is hate is what it comes down to. It's and this is something too that like this. I sent you the article of the call to action that the conservatory students, and I have a sponsor who's conservative and who called me yesterday and started a conversation with me saying, you signed this. Are you saying I'm complicit in racism? And I had a conversation with her, which was something, and it ended well, surprisingly. And I think what's needed to, this is very conceptual and theoretical, definitely, but I think that when communicating with people who we don't understand, or who we don't jive with on an ideological level, it's important to muster up whatever love we have in our bodies and communicate in non-accusational ways and communicate in loving ways, because the more accusational the approach of communication, the more likely hatred can come out of that. And the only way to be able to accomplish this is by taking a risk and communicating with people who we don't agree with, and having faith in having faith that these people are listeners. And because I mentioned this in another video, we're not living in a world where there's a spectrum of conservative and liberal. Like, yes, they
Yeah.
exist, of course, but like the root issue is there are people who want to listen and who don't want to listen.
Yeah.
And we need as many people who listen to come together as possible to do things, to work together, to
Yeah.
accomplish, to change hearts. Because only when you get those people in the middle who, like, are both liberal and Democrat and who kind of listen, if that's reached, then they are the gateway to accessing more people and
Yeah.
for allowing other people who don't listen. People who don't listen tend to be the people who hate. I think that's
I have two thoughts.
yeah,
So the
two thoughts, and
first,
then I think I'm gonna have to
I
go.
know, me too.
But yeah,
The cheese is wearing off.
I need more.
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat. I'm gonna end
Uh,
up eating this.
two thoughts. So firstly, I mean, in what I was saying before, where I feel like I don't know if it'll be possible to ever really solve these issues. I do want to make it clear that the conclusion can never be to not try.
Right.
And I
Yes.
think that there is something noble in recognizing that there can be progress, even if there's not a solution.
100%. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And because that is a thing. I think that if we approach something with, we need to fix it, we're going to get in trouble. If we approach things as like, we need to always make it better, then we can. And so, yeah, so I felt in some of what I was saying, I didn't want to come across as defeatist.
I want to jump in and say that I think that's something that we actually disagree with, because I think that if we think, oh, we can fix it, then I think that we aim higher and practically achieve more.
Well, no. And I think aim for fixing it, but I think that there does need to be an acknowledgement that is
Right.
difficult,
But
because
otherwise,
because I know it's a thing, and I've seen it, and I think I've probably felt it on my own, of like, then when you make a mistake, you're like, if you're not perfect, then there can be this tendency to be like,
to be hard on
no,
yourself.
I messed up.
And
I mean, I know it's a big thing of like being afraid to do anything because you don't want to do it wrong. And the truth is that if especially us as white men doing this work, we are going to fuck up. And that doesn't have to do with the content of who we are. It has to do with the fact that we have biases that
we're not aware of.
We don't even know what we don't know.
Exactly.
So we're going to make mistakes. And I think that if I am trying to be perfect, which I tried to be, if then there is an imperfection, then I can have a response where I go,
where you're not hard on yourself. All right.
So I think that I like the mindset of, I want to be better, and I want to always be better, because one, to me, that is acknowledgement that it's a continuous thing. It's not something where we can go, okay, we fixed it, it's done. And that's what we're working towards. Instead, I'm not working towards one thing, I'm working towards many things over a period of time.
Yes, and it's always a process too, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it allows room, I don't want unforced errors where I just go out and say something really racist and go, yeah, but I need to be allowed to make mistakes. But if there is improvement,
right.
No, but I think if there is an improvement and I can acknowledge, oh, I made a mistake, I can learn to not make that mistake the next time. I think that'll be helpful I know it's helpful for myself. I think it'll be helpful for a lot. Something I want to challenge you on is the approaching things from a place of love instead of a place of accusation. I think that in many ways, it's very easy to learn something when it is in a completely safe environment. And I think that, for example, we're allowed to have a conversation like this because we're very comfortable. We know each other really well. We come from a place of love and understanding with each other that we can delve into bigger topics. And I'm not just referring to this. I mean, I think we've had far more hard-hitting conversations in the past. But if you only are entering into a place like this when there is love and when there is when it is a safe environment for you, you're not risking all that much. And so I think that there's levels. If somebody is new to this, absolutely welcome them, facilitate them. But if somebody is out there and they're like, my heart's in the right place because I'm not racist, I think they need to hear it. Yeah, like this person who called you, I think needs to hear, yes, you were complicit.
Yeah, which is something I did not do. That's true.
Well,
I did not do that.
And I think that that's a thing of that. If there's going to be an acknowledgement of things you can do, there needs to be an acknowledgement of this. I think that both are not mutually exclusive. I think you can go in and say, I know you are a good person. I know that you are not trying to harm anyone. I also know, even if you haven't done anything wrong, you've benefited from this sort of thing. And I think that we're only going to truly challenge ourselves if we're put in a place of discomfort. And if we're put in a place where we genuinely consider ourselves. I would also point out that I think it's very easy for us, again, as white men, as cis white men coming into this, it's very easy for us to say, oh, but we're only going to learn from love, when we're not in a place where merely existing is going to automatically engender hostility from the world at large. And I mean, I think that's ultimately what, the reason the name of this movement is Black Lives Matter is because there are people who don't believe that and who make that known very clearly. I am sure that there are a lot of people out there who would love it if they could enter this conversation and these many conversations that will continue to be had from a place of love and understanding. But there are people who have to make sacrifices and step into rooms where they are not welcomed, where they are not comfortable. Even if people are welcoming, they're going to naturally have to feel discomfort from being the only person who looks like them in that room. So I think that we have not had to experience discomfort for a very long time. And I think that there has been a consciousness of, oh, well, we need to be nice to people and we need to do this. And I think there's a place for that. And I think certainly at the beginnings of this, trying to bring people in, that's important. That's really important. But I think that if there's going to be genuine change, we need to confront our issues, and that's going to be uncomfortable. And it frankly requires people calling us out.
Right. I think I agree with. I think that's all really smart, and I agree with all of it. And I think that we may disagree on when. I think we may disagree as to when to use maybe accusational language or taking action and calling out. Like, I think that, see, like in a position like this, like I think that we all lie on a spectrum of like how articulate we can be and how quickly thinking we can be in a moment where it catches us off guard. And I think for you, I think that your skills in rhetoric are very quick, and so because of that, I think that if you were put in a similar situation as I was, you'd be able to do that. But maybe
I don't want to let myself off the hook, because there have been situations where I should have said something and haven't.
And for me, I guess my strategy is to try to bring as many people together with love to then get into a conversation where then, because we're all in the same physical place and we're all in dialogue with each other and we know why we're all there for a common purpose, that's when conversation can become a little more upfront and personal. And and so I think for me, from what I'm understanding from you is that it's important to call a person out for being complicit in racism before coming to the table to talk about things. And for me,
Yeah.
I prioritize getting people to the table first and then being able, do you see what
Yeah,
I mean?
I mean, I guess I would say there's not like the right way to do this.
Right. I think that's
And
just
yeah,
I'm saying that because I think that
yeah,
is the difference of our approach.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm not even sure if I think that somebody needs to confront something before they come to the table. I kind of feel like the important thing is somebody's at the table. And
Right. That's what I believe too. And
I
I
think
think
that
that,
ideally, if people could confront things before coming to the table, great. But everybody's coming to the
right.
table with different levels of stuff. Some people have eaten at this restaurant before. Some people, it's their first time. Some people are like, I don't understand the words on this menu.
Yeah, you're right.
So people are going to be coming from different places. I think some people are coming having done different levels of work. So I think it for me, it isn't really about the time of it. But I think it's just that if substantive change is going to happen, it needs to happen with accusation and
You,
discomfort.
I
Because
think this is so good. I
it's
love this
really
so much.
easy. Otherwise, it's too easy, and everyone would do it.
I
I
think,
mean, same thing. Yeah.
yeah, I think, right now we're at, oh my gosh, I wish we had talked about this. Like, I mean, but this is the thing that I want to do is like, I'm starting to realize that, I mean, this is a great place to actually have a forum with like 4 people where we
Mm.
each where so maybe maybe in a little bit I'll have like conversations with people, and the people that I think like really can talk
Yeah.
about this intelligently. We could have like a 2-hour forum on Black Lives Matter and how to approach this. And I know people from a lot of different perspectives, all listeners, but of different ideological flavors
Yeah.
and different backgrounds. And I think that I'm just discovering now that this could be a great place to have a forum like this. Miles, it's great.
Yeah.
This is
I
really
mean, I
great.
think you're gonna evolve this project.
Well, this is an organic
Yeah.
thing, that's
Yeah.
what's
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome about it.
And I think that what we're doing now is a starting point. And I know
Yeah.
you're going to find things, you're going to run with them. So many projects that are out there started as one thing and then became something else. I mean, documentaries are notorious for that, where somebody starts doing a documentary on something and then will meet somebody and be like, oh, I'm just going to make the documentary about you. So like
Yeah.
the great film Jiro Dreams of Sushi was just supposed to be a documentary about sushi. And then the first person they talked to was Jiro Ito, I think is his name.
It was like the master
Great
chef, right?
sushi
Or
chef.
something.
Yeah. And the filmmaker David Gelb, who's just like, well, you're it. Like I have a whole movie about you here. So yeah, I think that you're gonna hone in on what you're wanting to do with this. And that's going to be exciting. I will encourage, if you want to have forums that are like this, of
Yeah.
just making sure that that like if you want to do like a forum like this about Black Lives Matter, making sure that
Oh yeah, that we have. Yeah,
that
of course.
well,
People of
no,
color.
not just that Black people are participants, but are part of the conception of this. And of how it's put
Yes,
together.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I think that would be important. I mean, I just know personally, like, and you haven't invited me to be on a panel, but I wouldn't want to be on a panel like that. I'd want to listen, but I don't think I have much to say that would not be said from another experience. But
Yeah, helpful, very helpful, Miles.
I think
Yeah.
that in any sort of activism, bringing people in not just as like, and I want to hear your voice, but really making sure that they can
That they're the ones
organize,
who is, yeah, they're the ones who are, yeah, exactly.
because that way you're gonna avoid errors that you might have made on your own, and that I wouldn't be able to tell you that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And on that
Miles,
note,
Well, what was it? That's a 3 hour, 18-minute
I
film.
know. I know. It's longer than Dogville. We've come a long way from craft singles.
Yeah, gonna get like 100,000 views on the first day.
Woo!
Yeah.
Oh God.
Could you imagine? Like,
Yeah. Well,
President
I
Trump.
love this. And what I also loved is I feel like this was a pretty normal conversation for us.
Yeah, truly, actually, right? Only
Yeah.
we would
Once
be
we got
walking
past, like,
around.
here's like normally our conversations don't start with me explaining how I know you, but
Every time.
every time, like,
Reminding me.
hey, Kenny, great to see you. So I'm Miles. I'm an actor, and we met at Kenyon College, which is a small school in Gambier, Ohio.
I think, actually, there's no way he's going to watch this. So I'm going to drop the name. But I think we actually commiserate at like, my first bonding moment with you was us, like, kind of talking about Patrick Joyle.
I think so.
So there's
I
no
think
way he's
so.
listened for 200 minutes. You know what I mean?
I don't know. There's some software
like-
that will like flag if a video mentions a
Oh
name.
my God. Well, let's hope not. Okay, Miles.
Love you, Kenny.
I love you, Miles.
very, very much.
Okay, I'll
And
let you
I'm
know.
glad. Well, no, I want to say I'm glad you are finding things to do, especially in this time, that are fulfilling you. You've always been somebody who's very interested in other people. And I think this is a really wonderful project. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Miles, I love you. I'll talk
Love
to
you
you
too.
soon. Okay.
Talk to you soon. Gonna go eat cheese. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Everyone. 2 people.
Bye, Patrick Joyle.
Yeah, bye, Patty. See ya.
Bye.